Good morning. Welcome to the Calaveras County Board of Supervisors of our regular meeting on October 28, 2014. Just for the record, a little different today that this will be a joint meeting around the 10 o'clock hour with the Calaveras County Planning Commission. So on today's agenda, we started at 8 o'clock with a closed session agenda. Had no public comments. Item number 1, pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9, conference with legal counsel, existing litigation, Dennis Ponte versus County of Calaveras, Calaveras County Superior Court case, number 12CV38597. I excuse myself from this discussion. We had 3 members present and there was no action taken, per reported by legal counsel. Item number 2, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation, 1 case, pursuant to Government Code 54956.9. There is no action taken on this item as well. At this time, I ask that you stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So I'm going to take this opportunity at this point to kind of describe our agenda and our day as we see things going forward. We're going to start off with our recognition and acknowledgments, and then we'll go into our public comment section of the agenda. We'll then move on to our consent agenda, and at the 10 o'clock hour, or about 10 to 10, I'm going to take a recess and allow for the planning staff to set up for the next part of our agenda. So if we have not covered all of the consent items, we will take and hold that particular item on the agenda, go into a recess at 10 to 10. At 10 o'clock, we'll start our regular agenda with items number 20, 21, 22, and then we will come back to our consent agenda items if we have not been able to address them earlier in the day. We plan to have a 1-hour lunch break beginning at the 12:30 hour from 12:30 to 1:30. So wherever we are in our agenda, we'll take that break to allow an opportunity to catch a bite to eat. So with that, we're going to start our agenda with our recognition and acknowledgments. We have our assessor here. We have adopting a proclamation congratulating Debbie Cannon on her retirement. Leslie, would you like to lead this discussion?
I would. Thank you, Madam Chair, honorable members of the board. This is Debbie Cannon. She's one of my staff members who you don't see very often, but who deals with the public on a very regular basis. Debbie started in our office almost 25 years ago. She has decided to retire on us and spend time with family and grandkids. Debbie's worked her way up from assessment clerk initially to now being an assessment technician 4, which is essentially the lead role in our assessment technician staff. She's worked for 3 assessors. She's seen our department go from the old legacy computer system to the megabyte property tax system, and she is absolutely an expert in everything that is done at the assessment tech level. We're definitely going to miss Debbie when she retires. She's leaving us on Friday, although she's technically not retiring until December. And I truly appreciate you adopting a proclamation honoring her on the occasion of her retirement.
Okay, thank you. With that, I'm going to read the proclamation, and then if Debbie would like to say anything. This is a proclamation congratulating Debbie Cannon on the occasion of her retirement as Assessment Technician 4 of Calaveras County. Whereas Debbie Cannon began her public service career in 1990 as an assessment clerk in the Calaveras County Assessor's Office, and whereas Debbie steadily moved up the ranks due to her diligence, attention to detail, and calm demeanor while dealing with the public, and whereas during Debbie's tenure, she trained several new assessment services staff members with a particular emphasis on following the revenue and taxation code to the letter. And whereas Debbie grappled with the implementation of the megabyte property tax system and could be counted on to take on any assignment needed to help produce the assessment role. And whereas Debbie Cannon served the residents of Calaveras County for almost 25 years, and whereas Debbie Cannon is retiring as an Assessment Technician 4 of Calaveras County, now therefore it be resolved that the Board of Supervisors acknowledge Debbie Cannon for her dedication and exemplary service to the County of Calaveras. Be it further resolved that the Board of Supervisors commend Debbie Cannon for her achievements in the position of Assessment Technician 4, and be it further resolved that the Board of Supervisors congratulates Debbie Cannon on the occasion of her retirement. I'll entertain a motion to accept this. Second. I have an overwhelming motion to approve this proclamation, and seconded. Motion made by Supervisor Edson, second by Supervisor Wright, to accept this proclamation, sending this proclamation recognizing Debbie Cannon for her almost 25 years of service to Calaveras County. Any public comments on this item? Seeing none, I'll take the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0 with Supervisor Spellman absent. Debbie.
I really do. But thank you very much.
Okay, best wishes, Debbie. Okay, at this time we have public comments. This is for any item of interest to the public that is within subject matter jurisdiction of the board and is not posted on the consent or regular agenda, may be addressed during the public comment period. California law prohibits the board from taking action on any matter which is not posted on the agenda unless it is determined to be an emergency by the Board of Supervisors. If public comment is completed before the 30-minute allotted time period, the board may immediately move to the consent agenda. If public comment is not completed during the allotted time period, it will be continued at the conclusion of the regular agenda in order to provide an opportunity for the remainder of the comments to be heard. So at this time, we'll take public comments. Anyone wishing to speak, please step forward to the podium.
There's not a rush to come up here. I'll start it off. I just want to encourage the board to seriously consider and hopefully adopt Supervisor Edson's proposal, which I understand is coming up later this morning, to begin engaging in a very comprehensive watershed management program. I've had the opportunity to hear Mr. Edson speak on this on several occasions, and each time it has grown in comprehensiveness and sophistication and ambition, too. In my field of study, we often talk about connecting the dots. And unfortunately, often in politics, we don't connect very many dots. We have our opinion or our ideology or our point of view or our stance, and that's it. And it's my way or the highway, and we have polarizations. Contrary to this, I think Cliff has been a natural dot connector, connecting more dots than even I could imagine as a former systems thinking teacher. The program is I think, very valuable, very important, and as I said, very ambitious. So I hope that we will give support to Mr. Edson to keep moving forward on this. The journey of 1,000 miles starts with the first few steps, and I think that's where we need to be going.
Thank you.
Is that my time, or is
That's somebody's phone.
I turned it off. Okay.
So this item is going to be addressed on item 21 of our agenda,
Yeah.
at which time we can take more public comments on
Okay,
this.
thanks.
Thank you. Any other public comments on items
Not
not on the
I almost
agenda?
broke my leg. I could almost retire. My name is Peter Reyes. I'm from Jenny Lynn. And along with this, I'm not taking anybody's time away. I just came across this little document over here. And August 24, 2010, there was something kind of a grant for Oh, what is it? $1.766938.00. And I just wonder if there's anything ever happened. This was something to planning department application for sustainable communities. And I just wonder whatever happened to it. I mean, because we're going through the same thing again. I don't know if the county, because I believe it was Tuolumne County was going to be the administrator. And it was addressing all the things that we're coming across right now. I just wonder if anybody can inform me, did it ever go or anything happened to it? Did anybody got the grant?
Didn't know.
Thank you, ma'am. That's all. Okay. So we're going to try again, right? Thank you, folks.
Joe Kelly, FEMA 2014. But before I start, I want to thank the road crew for the repairs, pothole repairs, for the southern portion of Pool Station Road, and for filling in of the shoulder a half-mile north of Tiscornia's loading chute, the infamous hole on the side of the shoulder there, or no shoulder hole, that took out an axle on one of my trailers. Now I want to get into FEMA 2014. Are you folks familiar with the Federal Register and the proposal that would enhance protection for the nation's public health and aquatic resources and increase the Clean Water Act program predictability and consistency by increasing clarity as to the scope of waters of the United States protected under this act? This is undergoing, has already had public comment and it's closed, so now they're working on it. Nothing's going to change on the concept of tributaries and waters of the federal government. Nassau Creek is part of that watershed that goes up to New Hogan Dam. So, I'm wondering why State Water's in there trying to muck up the thing with a water appropriation permit of water that does not belong to them, although they believe all waters of the state, all waters belong to the state of California. So that's something you folks might want to look at and review. The other thing is, for those, all of the people in this county, but the statutory water rights law, January 2014, I believe the governor just signed this stuff in. But going through it, I found some rather interesting information that those ranchers out there that have, or any property owner that has a pond on it, had better beware, because they are now causing you to, basically, you'll wind up registering them and paying a fee to the state for that. And then I would assume that eventually you'll be paying additional fee or an annual fee or 5-year fee, whatever it is. But this is all about the legislature finds and declares that it is necessary and beneficial to the state to clear up many heretofore uncertain conditions of water rights, which are the result of a large number of dams and other water impoundment structures which have been constructed for livestock watering use, including domestic and recreational use, which is incidental to the livestock use. So on other section of it gives time elements of where they had to have it in, and at another time element where they had to have reported it. This is back in the 70s. So the people of this county, be prepared. The state's coming to get money because it's broke too. Thank you.
Thank you.
See your picture, Joe. Oh, thank you.
Any-
Oh, I thought I'd leave it here so it'd be burned into your memory.
I've seen it.
Okay. Yeah, but I want it burned in the memory.
Good morning, Bonnie Newman from Double Springs. Forgive me, folks, I got to get this off my chest. Last meeting I was angry at you for letting Lori Norton go. I had to get over that. Maybe I don't blame her for getting out. This time I'm mad at the meeting that happened last time. I'm glad Spellman's gone. I hope he doesn't come back to any of the rest of the meetings. At the last meeting, as soon as we convened, he got up and left for like a half hour. Then he comes back with 2 giant sodas or something, or vodka, I don't know what, but pretty soon a party was happening over there. The district attorney was trying to explain something about $37,000 that might be extra somewhere, and we couldn't even hear what the details of that were because of all this racket going on over there. And $37,000 may not be a lot of money to you big shots, but for home care workers, that could mean a 75-cent an hour pay raise. So that was kind of important to hear because we already know the county's getting $50,000 that could be going into home care that's been allocated to other programs. So that was very important. That kind of ruckus, it's just clowning around. Debbie, you've got a gavel. Pound it on something or someone or something. I mean, get attention. At the least, they have to be separated because sometimes they're guffawing and it's just, we don't need good old boys up here yucking it up at taxpayers' expense. Business is trying to be conducted and it's very distracting. I've got more to say, but I don't dare say any more right now. I've got to go collect myself. I'm going to talk next time about the Board of Supervisors participating or not participating on advisory committees and commissions and the expectations that these committees and commissions have to be professional when we're looking to you all to be the examples. What are we doing out here as volunteers if we don't have that link that makes us relevant? We're just wasting time and money. That's all we're doing out here. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any additional public comments?
Madam Chair, Board of Supervisors, I'm Al Segala, Taxpayer Association. Today is really a big day with a joint meeting with the Planning Commission, and we're starting a process for the next several months to update our general plan. Our taxpayers group is most concerned about property rights as we go through the process. So we'll be trying to encourage alternatives in thinking to try to do that so that there's very minimum damage done to a basic constitutional rights. We've reviewed some excellent work that's been done by the Calaveras Planning Coalition on what their thoughts are, 11 points as to what they'd like to see in the general plan. Much of this has already been or is in the process of being adopted, but we'd like to approach each of these points with an alternative and maybe a little bit of friendly criticism. First is land uses should be consistent.
Mr. Segala,
Yes.
this should probably be more appropriate during the item where we're discussing the general plan.
Okay.
Because
All
this
right.
is the consent, the public comment is for items that are not going to be on the agenda.
Will you have public comments for the
Yes.
joint meeting?
Yes, we plan to have public
okay.
comments during that
In
section.
that case, we'll do that then. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I would just hate for your comments to be taken out of context when we're addressing that on the agenda. Any further public comments? Okay, seeing none, we will go on to our consent calendar, or consent agenda. And consent agenda items are expected to be routine and non-controversial. They will be acted upon by the board at one time without discussion. Any board member, staff member, or interested party may request removal of an item from the consent agenda for later discussion. Are there any members of the board who wish to remove an item? All right. Or is there any staff members who wish to remove an item on the consent agenda? Are there any interested staff members, parties who would like to remove an item?
7, 13, and 19, please.
7, 13, and 19.
I would like to look at also possibly the 3 and 5, I think it is. I'm sorry, 5 and 6, but they have the right to do that, but I don't want to mix the issues, so I'll let those two go. Thank you.
Okay. 7, 13, and 19. Any other items, Mr. Race?
11 and 12, please.
11 and 12. Any other items? Yes. 15? Item number 15. Any other items? Okay, we are removing items 7, 11, 12, 13, 15, and 19 from consent. I'll entertain a motion on the balance.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion made by Supervisor Callaway, second by Supervisor Edson, to approve the consent agenda as amended. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion carries 4-0 with one absent. All right, item number 7 from the Sheriff's. Designate Sheriff Office Live Scan Equipment Cogent CS500E as surplus and approve trade-in of Cogent CS500E for a cross-match 500P deck with DataWorks Plus. Is anybody here from the Sheriff's Department able to address this item? Yes.
What's the question?
Oh, I'm sorry. What's the question?
Joe Kelly. My questions are this. When was the Cogent CS500E purchased? Why was it purchased? Have the penal codes changed to make the correct machine obsolete, or the current machine, obsolete? When was the Sheriff's Office made aware of the compliance issue? What is being done to assure that the requested machine will be in compliance longer than the less than 1 year that this one they're surplusing is? I understand it was purchased about a year ago last October. So those are my questions. I think we need to start having a little better control of the monies and a little better understanding when they come forward and anybody comes forward and wants to purchase something, that we have to be assured that this thing isn't going to be a temporary machine or doesn't fit their needs. And is the Cogent CS500E, is that only a fingerprint or is that also a fingerprint palm machine? Thank you.
Good morning.
Hi. Debbie Parsons from the Sheriff's Department. First question I'll answer is that we updated 2 machines and we purchased 1 new machine. These are used for fingerprinting criminals, applicants, and registrants. We need palm print readers for the criminal and the 290 registrants. The palm print for the 290 registrants came out recently, and that's when we updated the old applicant machine so we could use it for 290 registrants. We didn't want the 290s coming in to the sheriff's office portion, so rather they go into the jail portion. The current palm print scanner that we have is being used in the criminal. It's in a secure area of the jail that the sheriff's tech can't access. We're using an old fingerprint scanner to fingerprint the applicants. So I think that covers everything. Did you have any more questions?
Mr. Kelly, any further questions to that?
So the CS500E was purchased as not have the update 2. They had 2 machines and you did an update of purchasing 1. Was that the one that was purchased to go within that update?
No.
No. So it was, and it is just a fingerprinting machine.
It's a palm print and fingerprint scanner.
This one you're wanting to toss in.
Yes.
So if it is a fingerprint and a palm print scanner, why do you need this new one? If it does the same thing.
Oh, I'm sorry. I misunderstood the question. We need the palm print scanner. That is the one that we're purchasing. The one that we purchased originally just did fingerprints, and that's what the trade-in's for.
Okay, and it is a statutory requirement that you have a palm and fingerprint scanner then?
Yes.
So how much notice does the government give you that you're going to have to change things or add something? This is what I'm getting at, is how the state government or federal government, whoever's working and putting you folks in positions to have these machines, how much notice do they give you? Because they're wasting our money if we have to get rid of it after a year of purchase because it only does fingerprints and you need something bigger to do palm and fingerprint. Somebody needs to tell the federal government or state government who's ever requiring this stuff, get their act together so that there's enough timeline period so that the county can be prepared for these kinds of things. It can be brought up during budget hearings or other type of things rather than being looked at as, well, that was only here for about a year and now it's being surplused. Makes no sense. I mean, I understand what Ms. Parsons is saying, but I don't like it because I think a whole lot of agencies within this county are going to be hit with the same thing. You got to bring it up to a new standard. Well, we need some time to have value out of those machines that we just purchased. So, thank you.
Sure.
I would agree.
Me too.
Oh, no. Anybody else? I want to get a forum here.
All right. Any additional questions on this item? All right. Thank you, Debbie. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion made by Supervisor Callaway, second by Supervisor Edson, to designate the Sheriff's Office Live Scan Equipment Cogent CS500E as surplus and approve trade-in for the Cogent CS500E for a cross-match 500P deck with DataWorks Plus LLC. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0 with one absent. All right, item number 11 from Human Services, adopting a resolution supporting Veterans Affairs telehealth services and community-based outpatient clinic for Calaveras County. We have a question on this item?
Yes, ma'am. I want to make a statement along that. I'm thankful for the Health and Human Services that they finally recognize that we do have a problem and they going for it. I realized that for the longest time they were servicing more people than we had in this county. But I want to thank you, whoever was instrumental, recognize this problem and doing something about it. So along that line, I want to compliment and I want to say thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments on this item? Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved. Second.
I have a motion made by Supervisor Edson, second by Supervisor Wright, to adopt a resolution supporting Veterans Affairs telehealth services and community-based outpatient clinic for Calaveras County. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0 with one absent. Item number 12, Public Health Services, Maternal, Child, and Adolescent Health Annual Funding Application for fiscal year 2000. Yes.
So this resolution says, number 11 says, Veterans Affairs Telehealth Services and Community-Based Outpatient Clinic. Okay. That's all I wanted to say. Thanks.
Okay, item number 12, Public Health Services, Maternal, Child, and Adolescent Health Annual Funding Application for fiscal year 2014. 15, authorize the Chair of the Board, the Calaveras Health and Human Services Agency Director, and the Public Health Services Manager to sign the policy compliance and certification forms for fiscal year 2014-15 annual funding application for the maternal, child, and adolescent health programs in the amount not to exceed $187,529. We had a question on this item?
Yes, ma'am. Peter Ray's Generalin. I have a little problem with it, and I don't know if anybody else does. I appreciate the cause, but when you want to give sex education to 12-year-olds and younger, especially when there's some prejudice along with that line, I have a problem with it. There's no way that shows that parents are going to be involved. I believe there's something like this is going on in schools already, and some of those education, let's put it this way, as a parents and grandparents and pretty soon great-grandparents, I have a problem, the state advocating their sex education to those kids. And I'm pretty blunt about it. I resent it, especially when they make a notation that those kids or any of these organizations will reach out to any of the faith-based organization. Now, I believe our public schools do have sex education. That's fine. Everybody took biology. But to assume, and I'm not saying there's no problems out there, but for the state to take over sex education and no requirement for parents to be involved, schools involved, but to start educating, especially Sacramento, when it comes to biology, integrity, honesty, and so on, I don't really need the state to especially fund something like this. For a 12-year-old, 13-year-old, 11-year-old to how to handle and why they have to handle it, 11, 12-year-old kids. And there's something it just, to me as a parent, would bother me and I would resent it very much. Now, it's nicely named something health care, but it basically boils down to sex education. And I don't know how many of your parents, you're all too young to have grandkids, but there is a deep resentment, in my opinion. I don't need this freaking state. I approve of protecting kids.
30 seconds.
But it's the last place for this credibility of this state taking over kids' sex education. You have sex education that's kind of overseen by the parents. Do I need additional this kind of money for some administrator to educate your kids? There's way too much of that going on in the state, and I don't like it. I resent it. I don't trust the state to start with. So, if you folks feel comfortable with it, please vote accordingly. But we cannot go into a little bit more detail when I have more time, either in this arena or outside. But that is slime. Thank you.
Okay, are there any other comments on this item or question? All right. Is somebody here from Health and Human Services to clarify? I know it's 12 years and under for a small section, the parental notification.
Yeah. Mary Sawicki, Director of Health and Human Services. The majority of this grant is actually spent on home visits for talking about and educating folks who already have infants and small children. A large part of this is the education of people who already have children and talking about preventative health care. We also do a lot of work on the sudden infant death syndrome and issues and ways of preventing that as well. The whole issue is to take a look at and making sure that the children receive pediatric care, that when women are pregnant, that they receive the appropriate care beforehand, so that we don't have health issues later on with the children that are born. And so you have to look at the overall emphasis of what this grant is about, and that is what we do in the work in this. This has been an ongoing grant. As you can see, we've been receiving this grant for many, many years, and that has been our emphasis.
Okay, any other comments on this item?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion made by Supervisor Wright, second by Supervisor Callaway, to adopt the Maternal, Child, and Adolescent Health Annual Funding Application for fiscal year 2014, authorizing the Chair of the Board, Calaveras Health and Human Services Agency Director, and the Public Health Services Manager to sign the policy compliance and certification forms for the fiscal year 2014-15 annual funding application for the Maternal, Child, and Adolescent Health Program in the amount not to exceed $187,529. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0 with one absent. Item number 13, brought to us by Public Works. Approve a resolution of intent to change the names of multiple county maintained roads and set a date for a public hearing. The question?
Joe Kelly. Under discussion of summary, paragraph 2, in conjunction with the county's GIS division of the Technology Services Department, Public Works proposes to change affected road names in the official road tabs to match names on existing street signs and the GIS maps as shown in Table 1. My concern is, the thing that caught me was the official road tabs, but my questions are this. What is the status of the historic Calaveras road book? That's where all the names of roads and all the applications for private roads being named and who named them that. That has a lot of information in there that I've had need of, and I don't know where it is. Number 2, was the public information contained in the roads book transferred to a county electronic media for access and storage? In other words, is it now in the official road tabs under what's going on with this agenda item? So the importance of the historic Calaveras roads book is the thing I'm concerned about, that it is added into this electronic media. Thank you.
Mr. Peck, or another question? Go ahead, Mr. Race.
Yeah.
Yes.
I got a question. Is that going to be county-wide? Because there's a number of roads that, I don't know if it's a planning department or public works, that roads that not quite named correctly and addresses not given out correctly. Is that just going to be an ongoing issue? So, because there's our public code, street goes straight, you don't change it, and it's supposed to be odd and even numbers, so on. There's some real mental giants who are in public works or planning department, whoever. I think they, like one of those roulette tables or something, whatever number came out, that was a house number, but not, yes ma'am, it is. Take a look at the Buena Vista Court, ma'am. That is, hopefully it gets changed. It's still public roads, and there's some, if there's emergency vehicles or emergency gets called out, they're screwed up because they can't find it. Thank you.
Mr. Packinger, can you address these questions?
Good morning, Robert Packinger, Public Works. The county maintains a list of county-maintained roads. We've had this list for a number of years. This is a list that's reported to the FHWA. It includes the functional classification of the roads.
FHWA being?
The Federal Highway Administration. So what happens is that during the course of a number of years, there were inconsistencies noted between what we maintain on that road tabs list that's reported to FHWA and what's on the assessor's parcel maps, what's the actual sign placed on the corner of the streets, and what's in the GIS system. So in order to clean up some of these inconsistencies, we went forward with this small list of roads. It's not exhaustive. It's a beginning effort. And in time, there may be others that we come back to the board to address. At this point, this is just a notification that we're going to entertain a public hearing in November to actually change the name of the road on the list for the most part, because the roadway name signs and what's on the APM list, they're already what has been established. So the effort is really to change the names on the list in a formal fashion. There are some roads, a few roads, that do need to have something added to the name so that there's differentiation between roads and emergency personnel can reach their destination easily. So this is just a small list, and in time there may be others that we come back to the board to address.
So what I understand then is this is going to be an ongoing process as you find the need and bring in information forward. Can you tell me, there was made mention of the historic Calaveras Road book. Does this information feed into that book or vice versa?
The only list that I know of is the Calaveras County maintained road list. I'd have to speak further with Mr. Kelly and see what he may know about a road book of names. The only other place that I went to look for names, I reviewed the recorded maps. A lot of those maps have the road names noted on there, so there's probably some research effort that needs to take place to find that.
And how about, do you work with GIS on this project?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we work closely with GIS on this.
All right. And how are these folks notified of these changes?
So after today, once this is passed, we're going to, as the inspector goes around doing his duties, he'll be posting a copy of the resolution at the road, and GIS will be notifying the residents with at least the ones that have the potential to have the name of the road changed. In other words, ones where there's a north added to it or a quarter, some clarification like that. The ones that don't have, that don't see an effect to their address, perhaps just the notification. There's also going to be posting in the paper to let them know of what we're doing.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions of Mr. Packinger on this? Mr. Rice? Yes.
Will the post office be notified?
Can you stand to this? Can you speak to the podium so everyone can hear you?
By the way, I don't mean to pick on you because I know you're cleaning up. Okay, so let's get that straight. Is there going to be coordination between the post office and Public Works? So, because it might say we just changed the number, but some folks might have to do a lot of changing to credit card bills and so on. So there's going to be some period of time when these adjustments can be made. I realize this has to be done, and I don't want to pick on this poor guy because he's cleaning up that department, and I want to thank him very much for it. But there's got to be some notification between the post office and him also, I hope. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hearing Mr. Packinger talk, it seems there's a whole lot of people that don't know about this historic Calaveras road book. This book has been in 3 different agencies: planning, building, public works. It's been shuffled around. My last noticing of it was in the assessor's office. I'm concerned because I was told at the time it would be difficult to get information out of it because other information pertinent to the assessor's information had been entered into that book. I wasn't looking for that. I was looking for the name of the person that named a private road. That's all I was looking for. If that book is destroyed or not available in an open forum situation, public document, then we've lost a whole lot of information that we should be keeping. It's important. I can't explain the importance of it, but it needs to be looked into. So if you want to figure out what it is, if you can lay it back on, excuse me for laying it on you, Robert, the issue of finding out where it is, if it's still available, and then trying to transfer it into the information he's going to be putting together. As long as the book is maintained and as long as it then eventually becomes electronic, I'm happy with that. I just want to be sure the information is still there and still for public use. Thank you.
As far as the book is concerned, it seems that I will have to go ahead and speak with the assessor's office. Proceed there.
So, Robert, he did bring up a point that he was talking about private roads as opposed to the public county maintained roads. So do you have a book on both of those?
I have no knowledge of that.
Okay.
The only thing that I know of where there are road names on private roads would be in the actual recorded maps. Perhaps we have to compile that from all the maps. I'm not sure what that effort would be. But I will try the easiest first and go to the assessor's office and see what's there. As far as notifying the post office, everyone will be notified. Post office, EMS, emergency personnel, everybody will be notified.
Okay.
Would the GIS have that information as far as because when they make those maps, all the private roads are on those layers?
My understanding is that they have compiled all of the historical information to the extent that they have something in their hands that they've inherited. Apparently, Mr. Kelly refers to a different piece of information from some historic book that I'm not sure that GIS may have. But I'll check with GIS.
Okay. Thank you. Any further comments or questions on this item? All right, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved. Second.
I have a motion by Supervisor Edson, second by Supervisor Wright, to approve a resolution of intent to change the names of multiple county maintained roads and set a date for a public hearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0 with one absent. Okay, I'm going to try to address item number 15. After addressing this item, we'll take up a 10-minute recess to allow planning to set up for the presentation. So item 15 was pulled. Administrative Service or Office authorize a blanket purchase order to the United States Postal Service for countywide postage in the amount of $45,000 for fiscal year 2014-15. Bonnie, the question?
The question was, this $45,000, does that come out of the general fund? And is the postage for all departments? And do departments include in their budgets line items for postage? And is that reimbursed back to this $45,000?
I'm going to answer on behalf of the Administrative Office, Mary Rose Rutikanga. Yes, this is general fund money. We actually budgeted in fiscal year 14-15 $99,000 for postage. The reason why we're coming forth a little bit earlier than usual is due to the ongoing election, we've been kind of using a little bit more postage than normal. In the beginning of the year, we did spend $45,000. We had a blanket purchase order for $45,000. This is an additional purchase order for that. Other departments do budget within their own budget items. There is a budget object code for them to budget postage. It comes directly out of this TSD. This is a budget unit of TSD, and this is to maintain our postage machine, NeoPost, and so this will go directly to the United States Postal Service.
Okay, any further questions on this item? Yeah, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion made by Supervisor Wright, second by Supervisor Callaway, to authorize a blanket purchase order to the United States Postal Service for countywide postage in the amount of $45,000 for fiscal year 2014-15. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0 with one absent. We had number 19 pulled from the Administrative Office, adopting a resolution recognizing an ongoing local state of emergency due to the actual and perceived threat of wildfire in California.
I'm just going to do a brief introduction. Supervisor Callaway, if you want to expand on this item was brought forth through the Administrative Office through Supervisor Callaway. As noted in the staff report, on July 22nd, Sierra County declared a local state of emergency due to the perceived threat of wildlife. wildfire. And hearing that Sierra County did this, RCRC has urged other small rural Sierra counties to also declare this local state of emergency in order to put pressure on the governor to appeal to the federal government to better maintain the forests. And if Supervisor Callaway, if you would like to expand on this item.
Yeah, we've been talking continually for years, all the counties that have had fires. We've had several big ones in Calaveras, and I felt that it's important for us to at least do some kind of action, and the action being that the monies needed to help with this forest management would be predominantly federal dollars. 20% of the land in Calaveras is federal land, and that's been where the large fires have been, where we've had evacuations. Alpine County has about 90% of their lands are federal lands, and we're just trying to bring pressure on the governor to lobby in Washington for additional funding for forest management to reduce the impact of fires in our neighborhoods. And it's not just the wildland-urban interface, it's all parts of the forest which could impact the urban areas. And the cost of fires, as we have experienced this year in California, has been significant. So there needs to be funding up front. We talk about that all the time. The funds aren't there, and this is a way to encourage the governor to act, to let him know that the rural counties of California feel that we need more resources to manage the forest to reduce the wildfires.
Okay, is there a question? This item was pulled. Was there a question on this item? Yes.
Just a quick clarification. John Buckley, Central Sierra Environmental Resource Center. As some of you know, I spent 13 years as a firefighter, and I'm actually on a state committee right now, forest and related to fire. Everything that Marita just shared is absolutely accurate, and it's very valid that you guys are putting forward something. However, words do matter, and two very minor changes that will make this more accurate. In the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whereas the management of lands, particularly regarding fire protection, etc., you have down in there that basically that the Forest Service it says is totally inadequate, has long been ignored, and is significantly underfunded. It's inadequate. It has been underfunded, but it has not been ignored. And on the Highway 4 corridor alone, there's not only all the fuel reduction that Marita knows has taken place, but there's now a Prather-Medusa project that's been approved, isn't yet implemented, and the Amador Calaveras consensus group is also working on a new project called the Hemlock with the Forest Service, and I just attended one of their meetings.
That's the cornerstone.
Yeah,
John.
but it's not just the cornerstone. They're actually trying to expand even more. And so all I would share is when you tell the Forest Service that they've ignored something when they're trying hard to do work, it's kind of like a backhanded slap. And the other is at the very last one, now therefore be it resolved, it's you're urging the governor to take action at the federal level to demand that the Forest Service take action. Again, our center is working in a Yosemite Stanislaus Solutions Collaborative, as well as the other one, the Amador one, to try and get more funding for forest treatments. And the Forest Service has its budget stretched to the max, asking the Forest Service to put more money. They're doing everything their staff and their dollars allow. What you have to ask is for Congress to fund more to the Forest Service. So you can put this forward exactly as it is, but the reality is the dollars have to come to the Forest Service for them to be able to do more. They are just struggling to get staff to propose and actually implement more projects, and they totally agree with everything Marita shared. Our local Stanislaus Forest staff totally agrees that more needs to be done.
Well, John, when you go back to the SNP report, I mean, this is no different than the SNP report, and that was back in the early mid-'90s,
No, you're
And
totally
you're-
correct, yeah.
I mean, I know I'm talking to the choir, and I downplayed the resolution the way it came to us, and I have no problem making those modifications. I think our Stanislaus National Forest has done as much as they can with the resources, but we have had at least the 2 large fires in the last 20 years.
Right, and
The
we're
Darby
dealing with
and
the
the
rim
Oak Gulch.
fire.
And then you've had the rim fire, so it's definitely not meant as the affront to the Stanislaus National Forest. I think in putting this together, we're looking at it in a little bit more global perspective, and true, it's for the state of California.
Right. My only suggestion isn't even that you change anything, is just to be aware is you can only demand the Forest Service to do so much when it only has dollars. Just as someone can get up here and demand that Calaveras County do something, if you don't have the dollars to do it or the resources, you want to do it, and the Forest Service sincerely does want to do it.
Well, and that's what we're trying to do, I believe, is to ask the governor to demand, not to, we're trying to step up
to raise
the
awareness.
pressure and in Washington about the need for resources.
Right, and I totally support that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Buckley.
If Mr. Segala, you have Mr. Race.
That's all right. He's older than I am.
Oh, I thought he went to get a smoke.
Go ahead.
Peter Race, gentlemen, mark the calendar, please, because I like to agree with Mr. Callaway and with the gentleman. A couple of things that I like to take issue with is it's the county or the feds or the state supposed to be the steward of those forests. And while they're putting a lot of pressure on individual property owners to keep it free of fires, putting it bluntly, and I'm going to agree with some of the folks out behind me, that the state and the feds, especially the feds, doing as an old a piss poor job of being the steward of those forests. And that's putting it very mildly. Someplace in Washington or Sacramento or something, take a reality. They got to do a little better management of those forests because it's just not fair. I don't care if it's a spotted owl or the other owl or whatever frog it is, they're getting killed for no reason because these big, largest landowner in California, not exactly doing a good job of being steward of those natural resources. And as far as you're going to need more money, folks, as far as I checked last time, the feds are kind of broke. The state not exactly doing too good, and the county's not doing good. And we're going to have to take a look at our priorities. And I think it's one of those things that should be on top of our priorities. Because I hate to look at our fire departments. Nobody really likes to talk about it, but our fire district are really hurt financially. So hopefully that in the near future, we're going to have to get our priorities straight. What is important to the people and around this whole county? Yes, it is very important. I agree with you. But let's, you got to be nice and diplomatic. But the feds crappy about maintaining natural resources. They want the power, but nobody takes responsibility for it. Thank you.
House of Gallant Taxpayer Association. Well, I agree with John Buckley on some of his points. It's pretty logical. But the problem may be more systemic. Declaring an ongoing emergency continuously is sort of like the boy that cried wolf. You cry wolf so many times and there's no fire, then when you do cry wolf again and there is a wolf, nobody comes to help you. So even though the intention is good, the way of doing that, it may backfire and not bring about the results we want. Now, for the systemic problem that we have, the lands controlled by the federal government are mismanaged and have been for many years. And this primarily is not caused by the federal government itself, but by an ongoing lobbying effort by the environmental community to reduce or almost eliminate the private logging, private harvesting of timber. You probably know that on the private lands, they don't have a problem with forest fires because they have the trees spaced appropriately, and they do a very good job of managing their land because they own it, and they expect to have results 80 to 100 years in the future. But I don't think that the federal government has that kind of horizon in its planning. It's more responsive to political forces, which have been predominantly from the environmental left. So as a consequence, we have these wildfires. We have all this fuel that continues out there. We have a federal government that's actually bankrupt and in debt to it's almost $17 trillion. It doesn't have extra money to throw at anything. If we are to survive with our present monetary system, it has to sharply start cutting back on expenses and reducing debt. But it's not doing that. It's almost blindly going ahead, almost looking at destruction and smiling. Maybe after destruction, it sees maybe a new form of government or something. I don't know. But one thing for sure, asking the federal government for more money is not very prudent. If the private sector does a better job of forest management, maybe the solution is to turn over more of the lands to the private sector.
15 seconds.
Especially those lands that are most prone to forest fire, which also probably are productive lands for timber. We made a mistake years ago. Rather than compound it, we just need to correct that mistake. Let's look to the private sector to solve the problem. Thank you.
Any other comments on this item?
Joe Kelly, I request you reject this. Is this one of those feel the pain tax increase campaigns? The hypocrisy of this thing. Here in Calaveras, we're all required to trim our trees up. We're all supposed to do this. Yet I can look up next door across from my mountain ranch property and see federal government lands that's under the BLM that is so full of ready to burn and explode materials, not just trees. They're not doing anything about it, but I'm required to do certain things. I find it hypocrisy. I think if you're going to do it, and I want to bring it down to the local level, because that's where it is right now, going from the local to the Fed. You have a problem. In your own ordinances, you have a thing that if a tree is, you want to do development, if you got a tree that's more than 6 inches round at chest height, you can't do anything with it. Hey, give me permission. My place will be free of burned trees. They will, meaning any oaks, any pine trees, any trees. Then I've got full use of my property, and I can go in and plant my trees that I'm responsible for, not at the request of the federal government or you folks or any other government agency, at my request to spend my money and put my trees on there and use them. So until somebody gets their thing together, and I truly find this as hypocrisy, because I look at this as local fires. Okay, we've had fires. Yes, we've had them. We've also had flooding. In 1997, when it flooded up in Arnold, in Miss Callaway's district, the mudslides and all that, OES was brought out to look for those monies that at that time might have been available to assist in the rebuilds and that. We haven't seen that since. We haven't seen anything with Nassau Creek either. So I'm going around about in this whole scheme of things. If you're going to do something about one thing, do it about it all, or don't do it at all. This piecemeal stuff, and as Peter said, the federal government doesn't have any money, but it can print it. It can print it. And then we're all going to be subject and peons to the federal government.
30 seconds.
Wake up, folks. Thank you.
Any other public comments or questions on this item? I'll bring it back to the board.
I'd like to make 2 modifications. One, I want to go back to the paragraph that Mr. Buckley addressed, and really in respect for the Stanislaus National Forest, we have a really good relationship with them. I'd like to modify it, the third line. Forest Service is under the jurisdiction is inadequate and is significantly underfunded. So to remove the word wholly and has long been ignored to drop. And in the next paragraph, I must have made a mistake when I did the resolution. I'd like to change 14 to 20 because the old gulch was 20 years ago, over 20. So over the last 20 years is good enough. Change the 14 to 20. And then with those modifications, I'd like to move on this item as amended.
Rita, could you repeat the last statement about what you want to?
Okay, where
the last.
I'd like to remove the word wholly, WHOLLY, and has long been ignored, and so it is significantly underfunded, because that's the whole purpose of this.
Okay. And changing in the next whereas, changing 14 to 20. All right.
I mean, it was 21 years, but
Right.
20 is good enough.
And the other,
Old Gulch?
1992.
92. That's 22 years. That's fine. Change it to 22.
and was there a third item?
No, that's it.
Okay.
Okay, Jeff. I mean, I agree.
Supervisor Edson has a comment?
Yeah, so I agree with those changes as well. I think that over time, people learn more about how to manage things, and I think we're evolving into that. I think it's a great idea that we bring this to the forefront for the governor to get whatever funding we can for the forest. Last year, in 2013, California spent $225 million on forest or wildfires, burned up over 560,000 acres last year. This year, we're up around $200 million on forest fires or wildfires already, and we burned up over 650,000 acres so far. So it isn't working the way it's working right now. We need some support for this. It also affects not just the waters. It affects the waters, of course, but because your erosion and your floods and things like that after a fire, but also affects the animals, the habitat, and which is being affected by all of this anyhow. But it also affects the economies of the nearby counties and the counties within tremendously. This year or last year, when when the rim fire happened, it took a big beating on our economy. I mean, I noticed a huge difference on the flow of folks coming up through the county for tourists and recreation. It nailed us last year. So I'm sure that Tuolumne County felt it really large. And so I feel that, it's one of the reasons why I'm bringing forth something a little later. We need to change our way of thinking, and I can tell you right now, by attacking the Forest Service or by saying somebody's wrong, it's not going to make it happen. What we need to do is learn how to drop those antics and come together and find a solution. I think this is a good part of it. Thank you, Maria, for bringing this forward.
Supervisor Wright, did you have some comments?
Well, I did like the suggestion about amending at the very end, the second to last paragraph. You didn't talk about changing that at all.
No.
But I think we should be asking Congress to supply more funding for this, because the Forest Service really, without the Cornerstone project here, we would have a lot less funding than we do now. And so, they've done everything and beyond to get money here. So we need Congress to take that action, not the Forest Service.
Right, what we're asking is for the governor to lobby.
Right.
How?
But we're asking the
however-
governor to demand that the United States Forest Service take action.
No,
But what we don't need them to take action. They're doing as much as they can. What we need is Congress to take action.
Well, we've copied McClintock on this.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I think we should change that.
Can I propose some language that might that you might consider?
Okay.
Is to say for the governor to take an active role at the federal level to demand that the United States Forest Service be adequately funded in order to take action in California's federal wild and forest lands.
That'd be good.
Fine.
Yeah,
Good.
that's fine.
Okay, third revision, my motion still holds.
Okay. So we have a motion made by Supervisor Callaway. Is there a second? Supervisor Edson on a second. So we are going to adopt the resolution recognizing an ongoing local state of emergency due to the actual and perceived threat of wildfire in California as amended. All those in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Motion carries 4-0 with one absent. Okay, only 15 minutes behind my perceived schedule. 19, excuse me. So at this point, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to take a 10-minute recess to allow for planning staff to set up their information here. And then we will also be asking the Planning Commission to join us. So at this point, we will reconvene at 10:30. Is there sound? Okay, well, welcome as we continue the Board of Supervisors meeting and a joint meeting with the Planning Commission. The board meeting was opened up earlier this morning. I'm going to allow the Planning Commission to open up their part of the meeting.
Great, thank you very much. I'd like to open the Planning Commission meeting of October 28, 2014. Let the record show that all the planning commissioners are present. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, this is item 20 on our regular agenda. Planning Department is going to provide a discussion and request for direction on public review and hearings for the general plan update. This is a joint workshop with the Board of Supervisors and the Planning Commission. So I'd like to turn this portion of the meeting over to our Planning Department for a review and open up discussion. Peter?
It's been about 7 months now that I've been here. Most of that time has been trying to figure out just all the history involved with the general plan. It's a long history, a lot of information there. We have been working with Augustine Planning Associates, APA out of Sonora, to prepare a draft. We are currently in the midst of final review of the administrative draft, and with the hope that it will be out sometime next month. I know in the previous memo to you, I mentioned that it would be available in October. A lot of loose ends, a lot of details still trying to resolve, but I feel confident that we'll have something out next month. So what that means then is the public will finally have a chance to look at the plan. And I'm sure there will be a lot of interest and a lot of comments, and hopefully I have captured the prior direction from the board on the previous workshops you've held, the information that I've gleaned from all the various documents, and that I have at least come close to what is expected of a general plan. But this is a draft, and this is the first draft the public will have a chance to look at, and I won't pretend to think I got it absolutely right. So the purpose of the next step in the process will be to hear from the public and to have the opportunity for you folks, all of you, to weigh in as to the direction that the plan should go and the county should go over the next 20 years or so. So once the plan is released, there will be a time period for for public review and for your review as well, to get to read and understand. I guess I still need to be a little closer to the mic. Understand the plan, have a chance to ask a lot of questions. We'll hold a number of public workshops, and then the goal, the task that will be before the board sometime early next year will be to select a project description, and that is term of art used in the CEQA, California Environmental Quality Act, that is the basis for which the environmental review is done. So what we want to do, what I'd like to have happen is have a plan that is fairly close to what you think you will adopt, because as a former mentor of mine says, we never have enough time to do it right, but we always have enough time to do it twice. I don't want to go down that road. I want to get pretty close to right the first time, so that when we spend several $100,000 and many months on preparing an EIR, we only have to do it once. If there are significant changes that are made after the draft EIR is prepared and circulated, then most likely we'll have to do it again if we make a lot of changes to the plan. So we want to be pretty close to where we think we're going. Now, the purpose of the EIR is informational for the decision makers, and to identify additional measures that could be incorporated into the plan that would mitigate some of those impacts. So there are potential for changes to be made during the process, but we don't want to make wholesale changes. So I really want to spend enough time in the next several months to vet the plan, to receive comments from the public, and to make sure that we're moving in the right direction. So we want to take the time to revise some of the policies, look at the maps, make the changes that we need to make, so that this is the plan that is going to be moving forward. So when the plan is released in a few weeks, it will contain a number of different components. The primary component that we've been working on is the draft policy, goals and policies and implementation programs. So there are 9 elements, and probably we'll forget a few, but land use, circulation, conservation, open space, public safety, those kinds of things will be contained. Each one will have a set of goals, of policies, and implementation programs. There will be a brief discussion that sort of outlines the background in each element. There will also be a background document that will contain a lot of the information that provides sort of the basis for the policies, and some of the requirements of state law that we have to look at, the analysis component of the plan. But really what I think that would be best would be to have sort of a short, concise document that focuses on the goals and policies and implementation programs that will be very useful as we move forward once the plan is finally adopted. One thing that I want to emphasize is the plan just doesn't sit on the shelf once it's adopted. I intend to be coming back on a regular basis, annually, biannually, or something, to say, how are we doing? Just like a business plan. You don't drop a business plan and stick it on the shelf and then 20 years later decide, gee, did we make any money? We want to be able looking at this regularly, making sure that we have, are we going in the direction we want to go? Are there changes in the economy, in population, components that we didn't anticipate, that we need to adjust the plan and adjust it regularly. Rather than wait 20 years and go through this whole process all over again, it should be adjusted on an ongoing basis and looked at regularly to see how we're doing, and make minor changes that are easy enough to make without having to spend 10 years doing the whole thing. So we will also have a new draft land use map. We've been working with GIS and staff to update that map that was released about 1.5 years ago. So there'll be a new land use map. And a really key component is the draft circulation map that looks at how does the road system and circulation system coordinate with land use and the future demand for traffic. So those will be the things that will be available once the plan is released. Now, we intend to provide ample opportunity for the public to review it. You all will receive a hard copy of it. It will be available on our website. We'll have copies available in our office as well as at county libraries to look at. We also will have a copy available at a local print shop that someone can go down to the print shop and purchase a copy if they want to. So we want to try to make sure that it's widely available for anyone who's interested to look at it and review it. So we sort of went through that. The other thing I want to do during the time frame between the release and when we start discussing it is hold a lot of workshops in the communities. Throughout the county, as well as meeting with any kind of special interest group, other agencies, anyone that has an interest in it, I am willing to meet with them and discuss it and help people understand the direction and the purpose of what we're trying to prepare here. So the tricky part is then trying to figure out, how much time we want to spend on this and how to take the input. While it is not required that the Planning Commission participate at this stage of the game per state law, I think the Planning Commission serves a very valuable role, and I'm sure that they would be very interested in participating in this process as well. So I would assume that we would have hearings before the Planning Commission as well as the board. And some of the things that we need to discuss today, and the reason why this is sort of a workshop setting, is how do you want to do that? Do we want to have joint hearings? How many hearings do you want to have? Are they going to be just regular meetings? Or are you going to set special meetings? Do you want to have night meetings? Do you want to have meetings out in your districts? A lot of variations, a lot of different options you could select to go forward with this, to accommodate public comment and a decision. When we get to the hearing process, I sort of plan that we would provide a presentation, sort of walk through the plan, be fairly lengthy presentation by staff, then an opportunity for question and answers by the board members and commissioners, and then there'd be an opportunity for public comment. These hearings can go on at great length. When I worked on the general plan in a prior jurisdiction, the Planning Commission hearings lasted over a year. I'm hoping that we won't have to do that. But it's really up to you how much time you want to devote to it. And there's a lot of unknowns. How much public comment will there be? How much? So we could set a limit on the number of hearings that you want to have before the Planning Commission. You could hold joint hearings with the Planning Commission and board so that the public comment is heard once, and then you could deliberate amongst yourselves, or either then deliberate by the Planning Commission and then the board. A lot of different options of how you want to do this. The end result being is that the plan is adjusted to meet your requirements, and then we move forward from there with the EIR process. There are a couple of other issues that sort of affect the timing. One is dealing with the housing element and how we might address the zoning map. So when we entered into a contract with Augustine Planning Associates to prepare the housing element update, we had indicated that we would just move that along concurrently with the general plan process. The original general plan contract with consultants did not include the housing element, but we're due for an update now, mandated by the state to be updated within a certain time frame. At the time, it was my understanding that there weren't significant concerns about timing regarding the housing element. What I've subsequently learned is that there are a number of programs that the county relies on state or federal funding that require a certified housing element. And if we don't do that within the first part of next year, we could lose out on somewhere in the range of $600,000 worth of state money that are used for ongoing programs. And so because of that, I am recommending that we take the housing element update and move that ahead. and separate from the rest of the general plan update. This is pretty common practice in a lot of jurisdictions. It would be nice if it could move forward concurrently, but because the housing element was just updated in 2010, it's really a matter of just sort of some updating of data and a few modifications to the policies. It's not a wholesale change. So I think this can go fairly quickly along with to get it certified by the state in a timely manner so we can maintain our position with the grants. The other thing that's happening right now is that we have the opportunity to move from a 5-year cycle to an 8-year cycle, which is a good thing. It means you only have to do it every 8 years rather than 5 years. We have to coordinate with the City of Angels Camp as well as the Regional Transportation Organization, the COG. They also have to agree that to move to that cycle. And I've discussed that with both the COG representatives and the planning director from Angels Camp, and they also concur that this is something they want to do. The COG, the Regional Transportation Organization, needs to make the decision known. They are ultimately the decision makers on this, according to the state, but they won't do it if we don't say yes. By the end of the year, we have to make a decision. And so today I'll be asking you to confirm or reject moving forward with the 8-year cycle. This again pushes us. We have to have the housing element certified within a time frame early next year. Otherwise, we actually get pushed to a 4-year cycle, which we really don't want to do that. So that sort of supports moving forward with the housing element separately. The final sort of side issue would be working on the zoning map concurrently with the general plan. We have a lot of old sort of what do they call holding zones or interim zones, the unclassified zone, the highway service zone, and I think it would be advantageous for us to do the zoning map update, not the full text of the zoning ordinance, that's a whole different project, but the zoning map update concurrently with the general plan so that all the changes are analyzed. That's something that we haven't really started yet, but it's a fairly easy process with GIS. Basically, you set up an algorithm that says if the land is such size and its general plan designation is this, then it goes into this zone. And we would, have an ability to sort of keep that zone close now to the existing zone. So it would correct any inconsistencies between the new general plan and the current plan we have, as well as clean up all those old interim zones. So I'm also recommending that we include the zoning ordinance as a part, or the zoning map as a part of the EIR and the project for this. Timeline. I almost hesitate to put this up here, but I better know it now than later. So the reality, and this is sort of the best case scenario. So the plan comes out, draft plan comes out in November. Let's turn around and sort of point to the thing here and hopefully this will get on the mic. Plan comes out in November, and we've got a 60 to 90-day review period that takes us into January, maybe February, depending on how much time we want to spend. Then we begin a round of public hearings to incorporate public comment and your concerns into the draft. If we spend 6 weeks doing that, we'll be really lucky, but to show that on the time frame. And then, so the end of February, we have a decision on the project description. And that's this little kind of, what do you call it, marker there. The contract for the EIR says that they will have a draft out in 6 months. I think that's very optimistic, but that's what the contract says. I'm going to go with that. We will start the process by a scoping meeting and notice of preparation, at which time the public has a chance to weigh in on what issues should be looked at, what are the potential environmental impacts associated with the general plan, and what needs to be addressed in the EIR. At the same time, the consultants will begin the analysis process. There's things we obviously know about that need to be addressed. They can start working on that stuff right away. So the 6 months will take us from February, March, out to August of next year. Once the draft EIR is released, there is a 45-day review period. Often that is extended to 60 or more just because of the volume of information and the length of time it's going to take to review all that information and prepare comments. And so I've scheduled 60 days for response or comment period on the draft EIR. Then the county staff and the consultants will prepare the response to comments and the final EIR. I'm guessing about a 3-month process, but depending on the extent of comments we receive from the public, it could take longer, it could take shorter. It's just sort of an unknown, but typically 3 months would be a reasonable time frame to, from the end of the comment period to the responses prepared and the final EIR prepared. That then is January of 2016. Then we can begin planning commission hearings. And again, sort of an unknown how much time that's going to take, but that's the, the final review, and that's when by state law, the planning commission is mandated to weigh in on the general plan and make a recommendation to the board, and ultimately then the board hearings for adoption. The earliest time frame that, given this schedule, will be in March or April of 2016. So just so everyone knows the reality of the time that we still have yet to move forward on this. That's that slide. So my recommendation to the board and the commission is that we hold a series of joint workshops beginning approximately 60 days after the release of the plan. I would work with the chairs to schedule those workshops. They would be a combination of regular hearing dates as well as special meetings, and including at least one evening meeting, so the people that work that can't come here during their working hours have a chance to participate. And that you establish a limit or a time frame of when you say, okay, we're going to conclude this at this point in time. And so that's sort of a self-imposed deadline on yourself so that we can move forward on this. I recommend that we process the housing element independently from the rest of the general plan so we can maintain our funding sources. And we go to the 8-year housing element cycle, and that we include the zoning map update. Do you have any questions?
Well, I'm sure we all have thoughts. So, Supervisor Miller.
In the community meetings or talking with, thank you, in community meetings or talking with the ABC business group and so forth, would we be able to take formal testimony at that time? Because some people aren't and want to come to San Andreas, but they'll go to the Valley Springs Business Association or the Greater Arnold Business Association and talk and make comments when we make a or you could.
Well, it wouldn't be a formal testimony before the board because it wouldn't. I don't.
Okay.
So, George, between now and the board hearings, it'd be informational meetings more than anything.
It's an informational meeting. So if a member of the public who's at an informational meeting has something that they would like to be considered or comment on, can that be taken and made part of the formal process? So they're not having to come to say.
I would say yes if it's written.
Okay.
And I would encourage people to provide written comments and requests. That way it's very clear in the record. There's no sort of translation error of, well, I heard this at a meeting and maybe I didn't quite get it right when I translated it to the board or the planning commission. That way it's very clear, here's what this individual or this entity wanted to see in the plan, what changes they wanted to see made.
And then that could be made a document.
And that would be part of the public
formal
record and would be included in any kind of packet that we would then provide to you at the beginning of the hearing process.
Okay. And are you going to have on the planning department website a place where people can enter also comments,
We could do that, yes.
which we've done for very controversial projects?
Yes, we'll have an opportunity. We'll have a place on the website for public comments.
That will be part of the record, public comments?
Yes, part of the record.
Okay. I like your idea of the zoning map. I think that's a great idea.
Means more work.
Is this going to be parcels? Pardon?
Means more work, but yeah.
Well, it's now
Do it now or do it later.
You're going to have to do it anyway. Is this going to be parcel specific?
Yes.
Okay.
So we won't have any parcels with dual zoning?
We may still have split zoning. There are a number of parcels out there that already have split zoning. There's some that have split land use designations. We have areas of, very large parcels that maybe have a small part of it's commercial, zoned up front by the highway, but the rest of it is rural residential. There is not a problem with that as long as it's clearly identified what part is commercial and what part is residential. So I'm working with GIS to clean that up.
Okay. But to piggyback on that, if someone has split zoning, which we don't want to have on the parcel, can they, through this process, say, I would like this zone instead of the other zone, so it becomes part of the total package instead of them applying and having to pay a fee to take care of it? And could they do it through this process?
My understanding, there's been a couple of processes that have been established previously by the board to take input from property owners as to what they would like to see their land. From when the last map came out, there was an opportunity for people to weigh in on that. That's part of the public review process, changing the map. And it's really up to the board to decide, to what degree do you want to have that? Do you want to have a formalized process where people can request a map change? In which case that could add additional time to the process, a lot more work, but at the same time this is the opportunity for people to do that. Or more of an informal process as you go through the public hearing process. Someone can say, well, if you bring up the map, here's my property here, and it really makes more sense for it to be X rather than Y. And you say, that makes sense, let's change it. So we will be probably getting a lot of requests for different changes. I don't think that the general plan update process should be a free general plan amendment for future development consideration, unless we say, here's the area that we have identified that's appropriate because of infrastructure and all the other reasons that for higher intensity uses. And someone over here says, well, I want that too. The implications are, as we start adding things, it's a higher level of environmental review. And so we need to be careful. But at the same time, recognize that people have the right to say, I think this is appropriate and here's the reasons why. So it's a balancing act of, how much time we want to spend. How critical is it? Is, time of the essence, or let's take the extra time to get it right so we don't have as much controversy later on in the process.
So are we going to have a protocol so that people would know these would be the parameters under which it can be done versus I want to change all this ag land to single-family residential?
We could develop that if that's something that the board would like to see.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments, questions from the board at this point? Planning Commission comments? Okay. Okay. So no further comments or questions from Planning Commission or board. I'm going to open it up for public comment at this time. So during the public comment section of this item, we're going to limit our speakers to 3 minutes. and allow everybody an opportunity to speak on this subject. Yes.
Vicki Reinke, Calaveras County Republicans. And thank you for the opportunity to even be involved now, to be able to give some input into the process of having this done, because we know it's always been controversial. Sadly, it probably still will be going forward, but it's important that we have this opportunity for the public. Anyway, I just have really one major comment and concern, because as Republicans, we would advocate that we shouldn't be telling people what to do with their private property. That's something that's sacred to freedom. So I haven't heard anything here that says you're going to notify each property owner and tell them exactly what you're doing to change their property. Not in the newspaper, not in telling us we're going to have some meetings, but to send them a letter specific to their property, so that they have that opportunity to say, you know what, sounds good to me. And to me, that's the biggest piece of this. You know what, I might come here and say, well, you know, I think this or that, but who am I to tell property owners what to do with their property? I understand general planning, because we don't want just mishmashy everywhere, because that's kind of how we've done it in the past. So some general planning is important to keep things in some kind of order. But I came from the valley, and you know, in cities you might have to do that more than you do in a rural community. So I think about us as being a rural community, and we live different than the people in the big cities. You know, the idea of high rise and all this stuff. But anyway, that part we'll get into it when we see the general plan. But I think that's my comment right now is, please put something in there that says you will write to, I know it's not cheap, but you know what? That's the right thing to do, is to let that property owner know what's happening to their property and let them give some input. Thank you.
Any other public comments? Okay, I'm going to close.
3 minutes, thank you. Spent more than that trying to read this stuff. Background talks about meeting minimum requirements. Does that meeting minimum requirements allow property owners to apply for development permits, parcel permits, subdivision maps? Will remove the 40-acre mule rule and 40-acre minimum lot. Under county should provide a broad spectrum public noticing of documents availability to the public. I would suggest, better yet, a 120-day review period. Under public meetings, rather than reflecting the desires of the county, shouldn't it reflect the desires of the property owners also? Who has the ownership of this county? We, the people that own the property, or you folks that we pay to do what you do? Under the housing element, when are you going to deal with Government Code Section 65302, flooding, post-2009 housing element cutoff date? You folks have been responsible since 2010 to do that. There's 3 codes that are your primary purpose in life. Government Code Section 65302 is one of them. That also goes down the conservation element and a lot of the other elements that are involved in this thing. So this board needs to do something about that. Also under that, define resources, because it talks about staff time and resources. We keep hearing that. If it's money, say it. If it's personnel, say it. Also talks in here about programs. So what programs? You will continue to need and going on to the specialized consultants, you will continue to need specialized consultants long term. You can't afford to hire staff with requisite knowledge. We're seeing that already. Going down to the zoning map, I strongly object to without text. It's a transparency issue. How do you know what the zoning means? Splitting the map and text leaves for another day confusion, lack of funding for text construction, lack of understanding of zoning, flooding, floodplains, floodplain management by the county, the Department of Defense, Department of the Army, Corps of Engineers, and Environmental Protection Agency proposal, definition of the waters of the United States under the Clean Water Act. County postponement, delays, causes, forgetfulness due to staffing changes and potential violation of government codes by the county. Now, going over to the staff recommendations, under the number 2, I would add that direct staff to schedule hearings relative to government codes, section 65302, flooding. On number 3, I would say the changing to 8-year housing element gives you an additional 3 years of procrastination. You folks have shown it in the past, and it's still going on. So we need to come up to schedules. If you're going to put them out, do them. If you're not, don't put them out, because I don't particularly like people that tell me false stories. Thank you.
Al Segala, Taxpayer Association. We were discussing the underlying principles as we move ahead. There's 2 different approaches. One is the constitutional limited government approach, which we favor, and the other one is more a collective approach, where you have decision making by the group or the government. So the Calaveras coalition has come up with 11 points that are very thought out, reflecting their point of view, which is more the collective approach. So we like to talk about each one and with an alternative. The first one is land uses should be consistent with stated community visions or goals. Okay, our response is land uses should first be consistent with existing vested property rights and legal obligations which are attached to the land. Land uses may be consistent with stated community visions or goals, subject to the wishes of the property owners. Number 2, development should not outpace the ability of local governments to provide adequate services and infrastructure or reduce the level of services provided to existing community residents. Our response, development rights should not be hampered or infringed upon by the inability of local governments to provide adequate services and infrastructure, nor should rights be impaired by the mere possibility of a reduced level of services provided to existing community residents. Number 3, project design should work with the contour of the land, preserve physical features such as rock outcroppings, trees, watercourses, and wetlands, and protect important wildlife habitat. Our response, project design should be determined by the property owner, who is ultimately responsible for the consequences. Public control of project design should only involve protection of the rights of neighboring property owners or the public. Number 4, county and city plans should protect key wildlife habitat, visual quality, agricultural lands, and open space resources. Our response, county and city plans must first protect the rights of the citizens. Key wildlife, visual quality, agricultural land, and open space resources, while usually desirable, are not superior to the private property rights of the people. County and city plans for publicly owned property need to reflect the good management practices. Thank you. There's more to follow.
I was going to continue on with where Al left off, but also I do want to make the point that I think public input should be more than just getting opinions from various groups of people. I mean, opinions are interesting, but they're not the property owners. So public input should include getting written permission from the property owners before changes are made, and that's just the right thing to do. So I wanted to continue on. I'm just going to read the property-friendly principles that Al has come up with. Projects should be approved subject to the provision of adequate utilities by the owner without significantly affecting existing usage. In case of water, this may include agreements with water providers, wells, or rainwater retention. Number 6, a new residential and commercial development should be determined by voluntary agreement. Land use regulations should involve general public safety issues such as roads, fire, and law enforcement. concentrating development in or out of existing towns should reflect the need for marketplace and wishes of the property owners. Infrastructure such as water lines, sewer lines, and roads should not be extended at public expense for the benefit of a private developer. All costs associated with infrastructure, including system capacities, should be borne by the developer, even if such development is not adjacent to existing development, such as in the creation of new communities. Community boundaries may grow or contract as a result of economic forces. Landscapes, greenbelts, and parks can be created voluntarily by property owners. Community identity relates more to the spirit of the people rather than to boundaries. The range of housing types available should be determined voluntarily by buyers and sellers. Government price fixing of housing or provision of government housing results in too many unintended consequences, such as increased cost and slums. Land use conservation is a natural evolution in response to changing human needs. Agricultural, industrial, and commercial businesses will and should expand and contract in response to market demands. Lastly, local government should comply with CEQA regulations as reasonably possible and aggressively challenge these guidelines to protect property owners from unreasonable and out-of-date rules and regulations. Thank you.
I'm sorry, could you give us your name? For the
My
record?
name is Tanya Dowsand.
Thank you.
I need to apologize.
Sure.
Tom Infacino, Calaveras Planning Coalition. I'm going to go over quickly what we support from the Planning Department's proposal, what we'd encourage you to do in addition, and the one thing we have a problem with. The CPC supports the following Planning Department proposals. First, the proposed 90-day public review period for the draft general plan update. Thank you. That's more than we asked for back in 2007 when we submitted a proposal. Two, we support the proposed informational workshops during the comment period. Three, we support the Planning Commission taking oral comments on the draft general plan update. Fourth, we support the concept of an evening meeting. And fifth, we support completing the housing element earlier and independently of the rest of the general plan. The CPC encourages the board to direct the Planning Department to do the following four things. One, as we suggested in 2007, please provide like a few weeks between the time the county and the Planning Commission receives the oral comments on the general plan update and the time the county deliberates. That way, you guys on the Planning Commission know why we're asking that. You see it all the time. Somebody from the public makes a good suggestion, and then you tell staff, could you guys look at that for a couple of weeks and get back to us with your perceptions of it and whether it's a good idea or a bad idea. So I think this would give the planning staff and you guys a chance to investigate some of the good suggestions you might get during the public comment process. Second thing is we'd ask you to begin or renew the legally required consultations with water planning agencies, the school district, fire safety authorities, and Native Americans. This will ensure that their needs are met in the project description general plan. We want you to allow people to see the 2012 Interior Draft General Plan. This will allow a few of us policy wonk types to mine any overlooked nuggets of wisdom from it. And fourth, we'd ask you to include a public process to help draft real general plan alternatives for comparison in the draft DIR. This will allow the county to compare competing options for resource use and for impact reduction. This will give supervisors a real choice at the end of the process. Finally, I'm afraid to say this, but I'm going to agree with Mr. Kelly. The zoning map, the CPC opposes the production of the zoning map before the zoning ordinances. The zoning map implements land uses and intensities that help define an owner's property rights. The zoning ordinance helps to identify the property owner's responsibilities so that his exercise of the land uses and densities do not harm his neighbor's property rights. It would be a recipe for a disastrous level of land use conflict to provide changes in zoning maps in the absence of the protections of the updated zoning ordinances. The county needs to bite the bullet and spend the time and the money to do the zoning map and the zoning ordinances updates concurrently. Thank you, and God bless. Are there any questions? Hearing none.
Thank you. We have a gentleman, Mr. Haley, and then Mr. Race.
Hi, my name is Dave Haley. I'm with Castle & Cook, and I represent the development community. I'd like to encourage the Planning Commission and Board to move as expeditiously as possible. We've been at this for about 9 years. In 2016, it'll be 10 years, and it's very difficult for us in the development community to produce the improvements, including community amenities and infrastructure, when we don't have a vision or the legal documents to move forward. And so I'd like to encourage you to move as fast as possible, including these joint sessions instead of independent planning commission and supervisors. The most important item I think I have to say is the state of California general plan guidelines recommend strongly to not be parcel specific. It's a general bubble diagram as relates to development, and it's important to not be so specific that it stretches the discussions and controversies. Again, it's a general guideline, general plan. I also recommend that a zoning map is not included in this process. It should trail. Thank you.
My name is Peter Race. I'm from Jenny Lynn, one of those devil bad people, Tea Partiers. I think we all know how much this county, taxpayers and taxpayers in general, has been spending on this thing, how long it's been going, and but we also aware of what's been taking place in other counties and a statewide activities, especially on the legal fronts. I'm sure you keep up what's going on in El Dorado County. I do. But I would recommend, without going to specific, if you come up with a plan, proposed plan, that you don't think would pass the vote of the public, don't do it. There is ways, just put a plan together. That's why he's going to make the big money. That's why you're going to make the big money. Put a plan together that your constituents can live with. If you're not going to put that together, there are tools available. Nearby county proved that to you. And it's amazing how fast the Board of Supervisors changed their mind. Referendum, recall, and boom, a couple of days later, the whole plan got regurgitated again, pulled back. You have litigations going all over the Bay Area, folks. You don't know what kind of water elements we have. And that's what the water district. You can have heaven up here. But if you're not going to have the water, you don't have the money for the infrastructures, it doesn't do you a damn good. Hopefully you can make use of this distinguished attorney over there, and she can keep you up to date what's going around this county and this state from Sacramento down here. Because folks, putting it bluntly, they're changing their mind once a week or once a month. And they're putting you in a bad spot. And another thing I recommend, don't do a mistake that some recently ex-supervisors claim that they're just the agent of the state. Because now a couple of supervisors can make a living from the state. They're not going to make a living from this county. So, it's just a general thing. Keep up to date what's going on around you. And when you get a grant, make sure you totally and completely and fully disclose the strings attached to it, because it's going to come back and bite you. There are certain strings of grants. No such thing as free lunch. And this county spent a whole bunch of money for nothing. For nothing. And I'm sure everybody's sincere about it. And I compliment them and I thank them. But you better come up with a plan that you feel that you could put in front of your constituents and they would vote for it. And otherwise, you're going to create more complications. And there's a lot of tools to create complications. You serving the constituents, not the state, not Caltrans.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Race.
You're more than welcome, ma'am. It was my
3 minutes.
pleasure.
3 minutes is up. Further public comments?
Good morning again, John Buckley, Central Sierra Environmental Resource Center. More than a decade ago, our center raised legal concerns over the adequacy of the current general plan, and there have been many discussions since that point related to how to correct those deficiencies and move forward. So it is very positive to hear the report today, the update, and to see that progress is being made and that the process and timeline is explicitly laid out to keep moving the update process forward. And I think everybody here, I'm talking again, someone used the phrase talking to the choir, there are economic and county government reasons for the county to have an internally consistent general plan that is also in full compliance with state law. And as Dave just pointed out, it's also fair to developers and others to have that move forward as speedily as possible. And clearly that has not been a fast process to this date. Based on the discussion between Supervisor Callaway and planning staff, though, I do raise one key point that I hope is very carefully addressed, because otherwise it will lead to more litigation, and that is that this update process is not the time for changes in land use entitlements or significant zoning changes to be thrown in as part of this broader overall process. And it can be very tempting when people show up at meetings and they would like this for their property, they would like this for their property, or developers show up and they would have these good reasons why this should change. That is a more site-specific environmental analysis and assessment that is pivotal not to cause delays, and a much more extensive analysis that would be delaying this forward. The last thing I point out is there are people, and has been reflected here today, I see it in contrast to Tuolumne County, where there's a very different mix of citizen activists. Here in Calaveras County, there are those who are very strongly invested in having opinions on almost every item that comes up before the board or the planning commission. Often they want to bring forward a particular philosophical view, and they would like to do that at every opportunity, throughout a hearing, throughout a board session, or throughout these upcoming workshops and others. The challenge that will be important is to try to focus on what are comments specific to the workshops that can best inform the process, and to limit to written input those that are more espousing views and philosophical positions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comments?
George Fry. Do cities have, in terms of general plan updates, do the counties, how often are they required to do an update? Is it 20 years? One of the things that I've heard about cities is anywhere from 7 to 10 years. Does anybody know whether that's the case or not? Next, the EIR. When will that selection of the person that's going to do, the firm that's going to do it, when will that happen? The next thing is that a lot of people in our community, Calaveras County, don't understand acronyms. And so I wonder if the acronyms are going to be spelled out in the text of the draft general plan, or whether there's going to be a glossary they can go to. Next item is all of the community plans in all of the different communities that all the folks put together, took the time to put together, are they going to be part of the general plan? I likewise I'm not in favor of the zoning map without the zoning ordinance. I think it's just going to create chaos. What are I know that there are 7 mandatory elements in the general plan. What are the 2 optional elements that is being proposed? And the last item has to do with the 5-year versus 8-year of the housing element. The track record, and it's not your fault, Peter, but the track record that's obvious to everybody in the county for this general plan update has not been very good. So I suggest that we stick with the 5-year, and maybe it'll get done within 8 years. Thank you.
Any additional public comments? Okay, seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board. So what I see here is, to kind of summarize what you're looking for, Peter, is directing staff to schedule a series of joint workshops with the board and the Planning Commission for review of and public comment of the draft general plan, commencing between 60 and 90 days after the release of the plan, so some clarification if we want to go to the 90-day time period. Direction should include whether hearings will be special hearings or scheduled on regular board meeting dates, if there's going to be an evening meeting scheduled, or 2 or 3, whether the Planning Commission will deliberate separately and provide a recommendation to the board, if we want to put a limit on the number of hearings that will be set. So that's kind of item number 1 in giving planning staff direction at this point. So is there anybody want to start the discussion on the 60 to 90-day comment period on the plan? Any thoughts there?
90 days.
I think I would prefer to go to 90 days.
Yeah, 90 days is good.
90 days, any other 90 days? 90 days. I think a poll of the board was a 90-day time period for public comment. In discussion of the hearings, we talked about joint meetings with the Planning Commission and the board, if that's something that we want to do, if we want to schedule them on our regular board days or not. As we look at the next 90 days, I know we're moving into kind of a holiday season as well. We have some board meetings I know that were kind of moved around in December, and we're not having a board meeting on Veterans Day, but I doubt very much if maybe that's the time frame of the plan being released.
Well, yes, if we have a 90-day comment period, we would start the hearings until February.
Okay.
So we
All
have
right.
plenty of time to
So we have
schedule
to
those.
get past through the holidays. So what's the board's pleasure on having some joint meetings with the Planning Commission for this public process?
I would like to see the meetings be joint, except when the Planning Commission's going to take deliberations, and I don't think we should be part of that. It should be a separate process from the Board of Supervisors. So I would like to think that most of the meetings that we have, excluding the one where the Planning Commission does their deliberations, needs to be separate.
Okay.
I would agree with that.
So joint meetings with Planning Commission and the board to seek out the public comment. And then once we have public comments and staff has a time for review, then the Planning Commission will meet separately and review those items and discuss them and deliberate.
Now, the one thing I'm sort of not clear on. I like the idea of being out throughout the county at different venues. So how would that marry with joint formal meetings? Would there be a way that we could have a meeting in the west end of the county and a meeting in the east end of the county?
I think what he's suggesting, I think what he's suggesting is that the planning staff is going to be doing the meetings out in the community, and the board and the planning commission would be meeting here.
I'm asking. I mean, I don't know why we have to be locked into that. I understood that. I mean, the informational meetings out and about in the community, but when we talk about formal meetings where we're taking testimony, that could there be, maybe if there's 4 of them, one is in the east end, one's in the west end. And I know it is a cumbersome process to find a room, to set up the microphones, to have staff. It costs more. I understand all that. But we are looking to have only one time. Well, I don't know what your expression was, one time versus that one you mentioned, Mr. Mauer, whatever it is, we only have one time. We're looking to have only one time to do it right. I'm just throwing it out for consideration, that's all.
So what I had anticipated would be we'd sort of walk through, the workshops, the hearings would be we'd start with, one element, land use element. We'd work our way through that, go on to the circulation element until we got to the end. And then, as was suggested, that the Planning Commission would then meet independently, deliberate, and come up with a recommendation. I think as we're reviewing and discussing and getting public input on the various elements, we would be noting the changes, and there would be votes taken throughout that time frame of, should we change this policy or not? And so as we're going through the policy, we're making changes. And there would be straw votes, more or less, until the formal action would be taken at the end of the process. That, okay, here are all the changes we made. We then have a period of time where we modify the document. We get the revised document out to you that shows all the changes that were made from what was released in November. And then the Planning Commission says yes, or they make some further changes, and that's their recommendation to you. Again, it's difficult to know how many meetings it's going to take to do that. But it's really up to the board and the commission. Do you want to hold some of those meetings out in the districts as opposed to here or at town hall if we need a larger venue, if there's going to be a lot of people showing up? It's totally up to you. We can make it work.
I guess maybe I just wasn't clear. I didn't think that one of the meetings we just discussed land use, and another one we just discussed circulation, and another one we just do noise.
We don't have to do it that way. That was sort of what I was thinking and intending that would be a logical way to work through the plan. But if we want to just pick up, whoever has the opportunity, there is a point to having it more free-form in that if someone only has the opportunity to come to one meeting and they want to talk about whatever and it's not on the agenda, then it doesn't really provide a fair opportunity for the people to really comment. So it makes it a little bit more cumbersome if we're flipping back and forth between, we're not sort of moving logically. Did we catch everything? Did we miss it?
It seems like those meetings could get very long if we tried to cover the full breadth of the general plan in 6 or 8 joint public hearings. And that's the only way it works if you're going to do it in different places.
Yeah.
I think it seems logical to break it down into some kind of bite-sized pieces. Yeah, that's how you develop it.
Yes.
Yeah, is there any other comments on that about breaking them down into each section of the general plan, or encompass all of them in one meeting and have a
Seems to me
series?
it would be a lot easier to manage if you had them individually. And then when people come, they may be interested in only a certain part of it too. So I don't know how you do it if you combine them all. That would be lazy. I wouldn't want to run that meeting.
We pretty much know which ones are going to be the most controversial.
So
then it wouldn't work to do it in other, to have a land use one in Copper and a land use one in Dorrington.
I guess I see it as having some opportunities for informational meetings, and maybe you can say, per district there's one or two, and you host an informational workshop, for lack of a better word, where it would allow people to kind of visualize and see the general plan, be able to talk to staff, see some of the mapping and language and that sort of thing, and kind of gather information. Written information then would be included in some sort of public document. When it gets back here to the joint meetings, I think it's important for the Planning Commission and Board to be sitting together, hearing the comments, reviewing the information together, and I see it breaking down. I think if you include everything, you're going to get so confused and bottled up maybe in a certain area. So if we could break it down to the various elements and, post it and make it clear that this is the key topic of what we're discussing. I think if people need to make a comment on another section of it, that's kind of the public comment section that could be, perhaps comments can be made at that point if they're not able to attend or whatever, but really focus on the element at hand and be able to seek public comment at that point. And I think if we can clearly identify through our online resources that's, look at a schedule out for the next, however many weeks or months that we're taking a look at, and identify each of the different meetings and what's going to be discussed, letting people know far in advance of these things, and they can kind of plan and organize and attend. That's how I see it. I see it as having one meeting with everything. Will be going on and on for hours and not really getting, areas accomplished. Like it was noted here, one area may be easier than the other. We may have to spend 2 meetings on, say, land use, but another element may not take as long. And then I would agree, as it gets the public comments and staff's had time to review and such, and then Planning Commission is meeting independently of the board to be able to, make their recommendations and such. That would be my
it's kind of like what you said, isn't it, Peter?
That's sort of what yes.
And everybody's
I'm glad we have
concurrent, right? Okay. Talked about evening meetings. I think as we look at our joint meetings, we take that into consideration. Having those joint meetings, we might have to meet, maybe perhaps weekly for some time to work through this process.
Yeah, I don't know about weekly, but we do have a scheduled night meeting already.
Yes.
So we can just continue with that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I think we want to include some evening meetings as we look at our calendar going forward. If we want to limit the number of hearings, will be set. I think that's going to be kind of based on breaking down the various elements and as we come together to see what number that will be. I don't know if we have a number now that we want to give. We want to have 5 meetings and call it good, or we want to have 10 meetings.
I'm going for 2.
2 meetings? Okay, you heard that. Anybody else have a comment on that, or any direction there?
It seems like we want to keep things moving along as quickly as possible and maintain some momentum, but we can't eat up the board's entire meeting, so it seems like we're going to have special meetings for this, which I'm sorry might require you to have weekly meetings.
No, I think that understandable on the surface, that makes sense, but if you look at our agendas, we have a lot of times usually in the day, like this today, for instance. You look at our agenda, we have plenty of time in most of our regularly scheduled meetings to have 4 hours, 5 hours long, and still get our business.
A couple of years ago, there were like 12-hour meetings.
Yeah.
But it seems like we've had a couple of really long meetings,
Yeah,
but
not
very many. So staff really can schedule that in to work it out.
My main point being that we don't want to see this process take 9 months.
Right.
We want to see it accomplished relatively quickly
That's
while we
why
can still remember what happened at the last meeting.
Let's get it done.
So I think, our respective chairs, whoever they might be in 2015, can work with staff about the planning of these things. And it might be a Tuesday meeting, and it might be also a meeting of the planning commissions, one of their meetings. So I think we can, change up days a little bit between a Tuesday and a Thursday type thing, because people who can't attend on a Tuesday may be able to make a Thursday type meeting. So.
Perhaps the best way is to schedule the first couple of meetings and then just see how fast it's taking to go through it, and we can adjust the schedule.
Okay, so does that pretty much address item 1 for you, Peter?
Yes.
Okay. Item 2 is directing staff to complete the 2014 housing element update independently of the rest of the general plan. For me, I would support that recommendation. How does the rest of the board or commission feels?
I would support it. I support both of those, donate here and the housing independently.
Is that overall supportive?
Sure.
Yes.
And a yes, yes, and a yes, yes, yes. Okay.
Madam Chair, I think
Yes.
I missed my window.
I'm sorry.
We moved quick here.
I don't know.
Excuse
It's like
me.
it was like went by. I did have a comment on not so much the public hearings, but on the community informational workshops.
Mm-hmm.
And my comment was that I know in District 2, pretty much every community submitted a community plan. And behind that community plan was quite a cadre of people that spent years, literally years, developing that community plan. Those plans were submitted, I think, in 2008, and then each of those community plans were actually heard at a planning commission meeting for public testimony in 2012. I think it was 2012. So what I would recommend, just to kind of utilize the resources of the task forces and leadership of these groups, is that the planning department actually got everybody's name, sort of reactivate these task forces so that they could conduct their own community or town hall meetings to review the general plan update, because I think what they're going to be looking at, not so much specifically about I want this land use on my parcel, because they've kind of already gone through that. They've already done that. There may be since it's been such a long period of time, a few of those, but the majority, I think, of people are going to be looking at how closely the general plan update aligns with the community plan that was submitted. So in terms of streamlining as well as respecting the work that has gone on by these people, I'd suggest, it would be a great benefit to the county to just reactivate these groups, put them back to work. That was it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, I would agree.
We will try to reach out to as many people as we can, and that's a great
We've
resource.
got a list if you need to know the key people of those task forces.
I'll be
in each
contacting you.
community. Yes.
In District 2. And also,
In District 2. And I imagine it's similar.
There are other
Yeah.
throughout the county.
Oh, yes.
as well.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's kind of bringing the circle back around to them.
I have one comment on that, though. While I agree they should be contacted and they can reactivate their groups, I think that those community outreach meetings need to be led by a member of the planning department, because otherwise I think we may lose focus on what the topic at hand is now. And if they want to meet independently and do a group review, be prepared for that, that would be great. But otherwise,
I don't think that that takes the place of an informational workshop with a clear focus.
Yes.
Agreed. Thank you.
Well, and provides consistency, I think, from one informational.
Community to community.
Right. I think that's helpful. Okay.
Thank you.
I apologize for
That's all right.
Okay, so we are in agreement on directing staff to complete the 2014 housing element update independently of the rest of the general plan. Item 3 was accepting moving to an 8-year housing element update cycle. So what's the consensus of Planning Commission and Board on that?
Yes.
Yes.
8-year cycle, Cliff, Ted? Did I get everybody? That's a yes, moving to an 8-year cycle. Directing staff to include the zoning map update as part of the project for the general plan update EIR.
Okay, since I've already voiced my opinion, I'll still voice it. I understood what was mentioned. I understood Mr. Haley and Mr. Buckley and Mr. Fry's comments on not having it. But when you go to public meetings on the general plan, everybody gets very focused into their good and what's happening in my neighborhood. And this will at least address that, which is why I asked earlier about a protocol. I'm not taking big things, but if you have a split zoning and you had an opportunity to change it, and if it's somewhat in keeping with the land use overlay versus making major changes, you meet the protocol. But I think it really diffuses a lot when you have the zoning map out. And there could be issues that come up that we didn't think about or we didn't consider that could impact the land use overlay. So I do support a zoning map update. I mean, because then I understand not having the details of the zoning map, but in essence, there's some inconsistencies that we already know about. But for the most part, what is a permitted use or not a permitted use might change, but the bulk of it is probably there. So I don't see how it would hurt to have the zoning map.
Okay.
Supervisor Wright, you had a comment?
Yeah, I do. I have a question. So you produce a zoning map. How does that help you if there's no explanation of the zones?
Well, we would be utilizing the existing zoning ordinance. So just the zones that exist today, we wouldn't be creating any new zones. So all the zone districts we have in today's ordinance those are the standards that would apply.
But wouldn't you then have to go back and update that all later on in the process? Or are you saying that we're going to continue to keep all the existing zones throughout this updated general plan?
We would keep the existing zones until such time as we modify them through a comprehensive zoning ordinance update.
And which time would you be changing the zoning map?
And we could be changing the zoning map again after that.
And
but
why not do it now? I mean, why not do both now?
The amount of work to rewrite the zoning code is huge. It would detract from what we're trying to do, is get the general plan done. So this is sort of an interim step. And the problem that I see with waiting to change the map until we have the zoning ordinance rewritten is going to be years to do that, realistically. And in the meantime, you have potentially conflicting land use and zoning. Some come through our office and says, what's the zoning for this property? We tell them it's, RR. But then they find out later on that the land use designation is for resource production. And so it's conflicting information because the zoning could potentially be inconsistent with the land use designation.
But aren't you going to run into that problem anyway with the update of the general plan land use designations and how the existing zoning ordinance is written now? Aren't you going to still have that conflict existing?
That would exist if we don't change the map concurrently. So the only changes that would be done would be to modify any zoning that would be inconsistent and to eliminate those two old historic zones of unclassified and highway service. So they would be changed to something using today's zoning requirements and today's zoning categories to be consistent with the general plan. At such time later on, when a comprehensive zoning ordinance update is done, we could possibly change, add some new zones, get rid of some zones, change them entirely. We could keep the same zones. We just modify the standards and permitted uses. There's a broad range of things that could be done for the zoning ordinance update that we haven't even started to talk about.
So you don't think that the new general plan land use designations that are going to be proposed will conflict with the existing zoning ordinance language?
No. There could be mapping conflicts where something that's currently zoned today could end up with a different land use designation that could lead to an inconsistency. And that's what I'm trying to address with a zoning map update at this point in time. It would be an interim step. It wouldn't be the full, rezone the entire county kind of thing. Just identifying those areas where there are inconsistencies that may be created through the adoption of the general plan land use map.
Okay. So, any other?
I just wanted to. It's something that concerns me is that through the community planning process, and I mean, there's a lot of confusion with people between everybody starts talking about zoning when you really try and keep them focused. No, we're really talking about the general plan. We're not talking about the zoning ordinance. So, kind of throwing that into the mix, I think has a lot of potential for creating a lot of chaos.
It will add to the complexity, yes.
I have a comment too. Similar to Fawn's, I think it's so tempting to go ahead and do the zone map update right now, and I see some benefits to that, but I also I have some concerns. I like the idea of an interim step in which we identify the parcels that will be out of compliance and perhaps do get that far so that when you're presenting the general plan, you can also be showing people which parcels are going to require an almost immediate zone change as a result of the general plan. So I guess that would be doing that work concurrently, but I would hate to see us bogged down in looking at individual parcels and trying to resolve any issues or rezoning someone's property without them having the opportunity to have input on it as part. I don't want to see the general plan adoption delayed by that. So I kind of like to see that process be happening, but maybe not actually rezone until there is an opportunity for people to have input on their individual parcels that are going to be rezoned. I don't know if that makes sense to anybody else.
Yeah,
It's fun.
I just feel my gut feeling is to keep it for later. I think people, as we go out, they focus in on that zoning and not the broad aspect of the general plan. And I think it could get very bogged down and chaotic for us as we want to, move forward on a general plan. I see the general plan as general. I have a hard time with narrowing down into specific zoning for different parcels. I don't know if we're there yet or not. I just like us to focus on the general plan, get that done. I don't know if there's a baby step in there or not. I don't want people coming to us saying, "Hey, wait a minute, let's change this around for me." It's get the freebie in. We're doing the EIR on their behalf, and so on and so forth. I just think it can get really chaotic, and I just, this has been a long time in the works. And I just like to see that general plan moving forward and getting something accomplished. So I guess my gut, when I hear the word zoning and let's start taking a look at all this stuff, I think we're just going to bog down, and we've been bogged down for 10 years. So I'm trying to debog us. It is my general feeling. So in my gut, it's like leave zoning alone for now.
Hearing those comments, I I think I'm changing my mind. Let me explain the rationale. In my prior experience in El Dorado County, adopted a general plan in 2004 after 14 years of general plan wars. The immediate next number one priority was to update the zoning code. They still have not updated the zoning code, and there's still inconsistencies. So that's the concern. And essentially what is happening is the battles that were waged over land use decisions in the general plan are being re-debated again, only more so. So I was hoping to maybe sort of avoid some of that, but I think that given the complexity and time frames and the focus on getting the plan adopted, it probably makes sense. I like Michelle and Fawn's idea of maybe some kind of interim step that we could
flag some real problems
after the general plan's adopted, and we still have relatively fresh information. We can bring the zoning into conformance with the general plan without the complete rewrite, because that will take some time, and there'll be a lot of issues to discuss at that point in time.
So what I'm hearing too, then the rewriting of the zoning and all of that can be just as long as the general plan process.
Or more so, because then
longer.
you're getting into really the details of all the nuts and bolts.
I just, we've just spent so many years trying to get ahead on this thing, and I just see it as bogging us down even more.
Yeah.
So
I will withdraw that
my
recommendation.
2 cents. Anybody else comment one way or the other? Supervisor Edson, any comments? Any commissioner additional comments? So the general consensus then is to focus on the general plan and leave zoning alone at this point? Perhaps a hybrid model of...
Identify the problem areas so that we're prepared to make an immediate move to bring it into compliance after the adoption.
And we'll know more, too, after we've gone through the round of public hearings, that, if there are major changes being done, so it actually maybe save us some extra work. So.
Okay. All right, so that addresses item number 4 for you. Was there anything else that you needed us to address? Is there a planning commission additional comments or?
I don't know, any comments from commissioners? No? Just thank you for this opportunity to participate in this process.
All right. Do we have a public comment?
The public had some questions, and George had some questions, and I had some suggestions. I was wondering if we could get some input from planning while they're here to address
That's my next agenda. Thank you. All right, so any other, no, planning commission's fine, board's fine? Okay, Peter, the questions that were received during the public comment section, can you address some of those?
So in answer to some of George's questions, the first one was the time requirement. The EIR consultant was selected several years ago, Rainey Planning and Management. They are on contract already to prepare the EIR. They're ready to go as soon as we're ready. There will be a glossary. We will spell out any acronyms that are used. We want to make this as user-friendly as possible. The community planning effort, I hate to sort of get into the content right now. That effort is utilized. It's not being overlooked. It may be in a different format than what people expected, but I have certainly gone through those draft community plans at length and try to incorporate those as best I can into the overall planning effort. The list of elements, and I'm hoping that my brain is... The mandated elements are land use, circulation, safety, seismic safety, noise, housing, and conservation and open space. We have combined seismic safety and safety because we really don't have much of a seismic issue up here. We do need to address it. It's not impossible, but it's not something that you're facing if you're down in the Bay Area or Southern California. We have created a public facilities and services element, as well as a resource production element, which focuses on agriculture, timber, and mining. So I think that's 8. What am I missing? All right, that, I think answers his question there. So I think that answers all of George's questions. The other issues that were raised by Tom was we wanted to see 120 days as far as comment period. You guys have said 90 seems to be sufficient at this point. We will be continuing to consult with water agencies, school districts, fire districts, and the Indian tribes as we're mandated to by state law. We do not believe that releasing a draft from several years ago provides any public benefit other than to distract from where we are today. It's like stepping backwards.
Peter, I have a question on that. I mean, for me, I would like to see the public, we spent how many tens of gajillion dollars on that document. I mean, I think we as you know, the public should have a chance to review what the heck we spent the money on. And, you know, I think releasing to that public would be helpful to the whole process rather than trying to you know, be seen as we're concealing and not being open on it. So, plus there might be ideas in there that, you know, the public and the board and the commission may ultimately want to implement in the plan. So I'd suggest that we do release that, but we'll wait till we release the actual draft of the plan first.
It's available, isn't it?
It's, no.
It's a document that was prepared. Yeah, we could make it available.
I think our county council has a comment on that.
I just want to clarify that that document is an administrative draft document, and so under the law, administrative draft documents are not public documents. So when you say it's open to the public, it is not a public document. It is a working draft document that is worked on internally by staff. And then whatever document that is released to the public for public comment is the public document. So certainly, you know, I would highly recommend against releasing any administrative draft document for public review, because that also includes any internal staff comments and a working draft of an ongoing the document as it's essentially being worked on. You know, if the reason I say that is there's that, but there have been multiple versions of the administrative draft document. This document has changed form significantly from 10 years ago. So if you say, okay, which document, we even have multiple, well, I don't think that we currently have them anymore, but there are versions of Mentier's work. So again, it's an internal document, and I would not recommend it. I would recommend against releasing an administrative draft document to the public. So I would just leave it at that.
Okay.
I just want to clarify here. We're not asking for any version that has marginalia or comments by planning staff. We're asking for the version that Mentier produced. Okay? The reason is so that we can go through that and mine any nuggets of wisdom that might be in there, as sort of Chris suggested, that could be helpful for resolving issues associated with the general plan. You may recall back in 2012 when we sort of made this shift, you also decided you didn't want to do the water element and the economic development element and the energy conservation element. But what you said to us at that time is, take those documents, look them over. If you think any policies in there belong in the mandatory elements of general plan, we want to know that. So that's exactly what we did. We took the energy conservation element and the water element and the economic development element, and we went through them. And out of those many, many pages, dozens and dozens of pages of elements, we found a few handful of policies in each one that we were able to recommend to the planning department to move forward in the general plan. I think that was a very successful conflict resolution process. And that's the kind of thing we're asking for here. Just a chance to go through that document, which, as you know, over $800,000 was spent on. It's kind of, 45,000 people in Calaveras County, so we each paid $18 for the book. We just like to read it.
My thoughts are with County Council. It was an administrative draft document, and it's a working document. It wasn't something for public review at that point.
Well,
so I have some concerns because of where we are now in the process and everything that's kind of gone wrong. I would hate to have to repeat that over and over again as we go forward.
It was, you can argue that it's an administrative draft version of the general plan, but it is the final document produced pursuant to an $800,000 plus public contract. And we're not talking about the launch codes for nuclear weapons here. We're talking about a planning document. So.
How do you know that launch codes aren't in there?
I'm fairly certain that Mr. Mintier does not have access to the launch codes for the nuclear weapons of the United States of America.
Okay, thank you.
Peter Race, gentlemen. I love this open and transparent for $800,000. It's really create a great trust of the wisdom that you're not willing to share. Folks, you're on public roll. Taxpayers pay. You're spending it. Show what you're getting for our money. I mean, I can fully appreciate that you have some, when you get behind closed door. That's fine. That's acceptable. But I would be like to know what's going on through your minds. I mean, I know having a meeting every other week is very stressful. And I know the attorney is very busy. But damn it, it's $800,000 and I was so almost $2 million you folks spent. Something has not been right. And I have great hope in the new supervisors. But folks, if you feel that you cannot show it to the public, obviously you know you should be doing it. I think it would be nice to know that you're doing something and you're proud of it. And you have the open-minded that you are willing to share it with your constituents. Otherwise, it appears that, hey, you're hiding something. And that's not what you're up there for. I don't think any one of you want to be seen that, hey, I'm hiding something. I'm thinking about this, I'm saying this, but I'm hiding this. Trust and respect you have to earn. You're going to get courtesy, but trust and respect you do have to earn. Thank you. Don't give me dirty looks now.
Al Segala, Taxpayer Association. The question I have is the planning department receiving input now informally and is in the process of working with that input in its processing of the general plan?
I've met with a number of organizations and individuals, and that has all helped frame my preparation of the draft.
I heard there was a discussion about the water and the economic development. Those are two very serious, critical issues. And I would really like to see those addressed. We meet every second Wednesday of the month on economic development, and we're working on bringing broadband to the county, countywide, and we need to have that in the general plan document. And with regard, excuse me, with regard to water, I mean, that's a huge issue in California, and it's a huge issue in Calaveras County. And I'd certainly like to be able to have that addressed in a, I don't know, a policy or something, or some kind of an addendum, but strong enough so that people will read it, hopefully understand it, and get on board, especially in light of Supervisor Edson's work that he's been doing on I'm drawing a blank.
Watershed?
Yeah, watershed management. He's doing a lot of different things. But the thing with the economic development, we're dying on the vine here, and we have got to do something to get people to come here. We've got to do something to let good developers know that we're open for business. And so I'm just strongly urging you to go back and look at those two items again. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to bring this back, the original.
Joe Kelly, I would agree with Mr. Infacino and Mr. Race, and I think you folks at this point in time, as the Planning Commission separately and as the board, could vote on the opinion of County Council to whether to release this information as to the way that Mr. Infacino expressed it could be released, and that would end this problem. It would also show a vote of the people here, of you folks, for we the citizens, to make decisions too. So if you would, please, I would ask you, Mr. Wright, make the motion. Thank you.
Dave Haley again. I didn't hear a response to my question of the general plan guidelines. State of California is saying to use a land use map and a bubble diagram and not parcel specific.
Right, we're trying to get to that question. One more comment. We haven't even begun to address the questions. So we're on the Mittner plan now. So
Yeah, I don't think we can.
Planning staff.
I don't
So
think we can vote on that.
we're not able to take a vote on anything, but what is the general consensus of this particular item?
Well, I think if we could release some after I don't want to get tied up with the draft on the plan, but, it would be, I think, interesting to see the final mentor draft without any of the, comments on the sidebar or, any of that unnecessary stuff. The actual, what he was proposing, I think it would be good to release to the public after the general plan draft is done. I don't think it's going to, I think people will be able to not confuse those two. I don't think it's going to do it. But I'm going to be in the minority.
So is there any comments on this one way or the other?
I guess my feeling is that you release that, whatever, before any comments were made, you're looking at something that is entirely different than what's going to be before us or the public. And it doesn't matter. The whole purpose of the administrative draft is for county council and planning to look at things that might be in conflict, that don't follow state law. So you're going to be looking at a draft of something that doesn't even match what it is that we're going to be looking at. I mean, if it's a feel-good document to take what they submitted, then all of a sudden that becomes the topic. Well, what about this and what about that? And well, this isn't, and this isn't right. Well, then I would like to think that the planning department has taken what was good and usable out of it and put it in the general plan.
And that's why we hired this great guy, and he's awesome. But he's only, staff. There's only a few of those experts out there. But the general plan is a whole citizen plan, and so I think everybody should have the opportunity to look through there, see what we spent the money on, and be like, well, these are good. These are good. Maybe we'll look through them and go, he already did it. He incorporated everything, but at least it gives people the opportunity to maybe find something in there. I don't really see
as long as if there's a legal reason that it will cause us to be, in some type of jeopardy from a lawsuit by releasing it, then I'm all for not releasing it. If there's not, and it's just a matter of public policy, then I think we should release it.
I just think it's take on a life of its own and take away separate from what it is that we're going to be discussing.
Well, I think it will be a distraction, but it could add to the overall and the final product.
So I think I like moving forward and not going backwards. We need to get the general plan complete. I don't see how bringing up old news is going to do that, and it's controversial to begin with. So, yeah, let's just open up a controversial door in the middle of a general plan update so that we can fight about it some more. I think we're moving forward in a very positive direction right now. I think we should stay that way, and we'll complete our task, and I think that's what we're here for.
And I, as the board, as I echoed my comments before, would support County Council's direction on this. Planning Commission members want to comment one way or the other?
I haven't seen the document, so I'm not trying to hide anything. I saw it as internally just one step in the process, and I don't personally feel any need to see that particular step versus any other step in the process. The one I'm looking forward to is the one that we're going to see next month. And I think we should, while I understand it's all interesting, there might be something there, I really have to trust that the process has continued to move forward, and that this document coming out is the one that I want to put my efforts into.
It would almost be like taking a whole step backwards.
But it's not a step
to go forward.
It really isn't. I mean, it's just adding. You have this information, and I know I'm the one minority up here, but
I was on the zoning map.
Yeah, I'm not worried about it. I mean, that's why I'm here. Is because to say my piece, and I think that it could be controversial, but this general plan is controversial in essence, and I think if we're distracting, if we're worried about releasing this document because it's going to distract us from our end goal, I think we're being just way too scared of the process. I mean, I think we need to let's release it and examine it. Let everybody in the world who ever has the time to look at an old document like that look at it. I mean, I just don't think it hurts. I think it adds to the transparency of government. I think that's always a good thing. But I'm going to
well, I'm going to agree with you that I think that it's taken on a life of its own. Like there is some big secret in it that I suspect there's nothing there. It's just didn't really capture the direction that the board was interested in heading. So I hate to have something out there that people think that there's something there. Yeah. So in that way, I see some value in, but I just hate to see it become a distraction from our main goal.
I would agree with that.
I would agree too. I mean, I think that certainly the transparency issue is very important. But the aspect that really makes me not in favor of it is the distraction and the fact that it has taken on a life of its own and has, I think, potentially to be a catalyzing kind of lightning rod, whole separate thing going on, when I don't think we need that. I mean, it's going to be challenging enough just trying to get us through the draft that we will be releasing in the next couple of weeks. Also introducing a previous administrative draft and explaining that to the public, and it's not like a county approved, it's just an administrative draft. How do you describe all of that to people trying to focus on the direction that we're going?
I mean, you just did it. This is an administrative draft.
Well, thank you, Chris.
Yeah, you did a good job.
Okay. You think so? Okay.
I mean, they're going to have to understand the general plan. I mean, so they can, we can, that's part of the process. We bring the whole community up to the level that we're at as far as understanding the planning process. It's a learning process.
So one
we
thing,
have to trust the public.
one thing I learned is if something don't work, then drop it and move on to something that does work, and that's where I like to go.
I would too. I mean, I think we all would, but how do we, I mean, why not? Because for me, it's like, if we release it now or, after the draft, then it's done and we've released it. Otherwise, it's just going to keep coming back until, 2 years from now, when we're still talking about the final draft. It's going to be like, well, what about the mid-tier report? I mean, let's just release it and be done with it.
So we haven't heard from these two planning commissioners. Any speak now or?
Well, I'm always afraid we're going to get into one of those things. You try to eat something bigger than your head, and it kind of
we're there.
It sort of it becomes almost too large, and if we start going back in and second guessing what somebody said 2 years ago, I don't think that's productive.
Well, I think there are reasons why these administrative drafts aren't releasable or released. I haven't heard anything to suggest those reasons don't apply here. And so I have to go with the judgment of county council and the planning director that this is not the right thing to do.
Okay, so I think as a consensus of the board and planning commission, we're not releasing the document.
Can I have?
You have 30 seconds.
30 seconds, thank you. The general plan is considered the land use constitution of a county. When the founding fathers drafted our constitution, they had a constitutional convention, and there were two different drafts proposed. One was a New Jersey plan, which would give representation to two representatives for each state. The other one was a Virginia plan, which gave representation in the Congress by population. Those are available for review on websites all over the nation because those were important draft documents, and they ended up forming the basis for our bicameral legislature. And they continue to be discussed throughout the world as people are developing constitutions. We have a interior draft document, which is supposedly the basis for this latest outgrowth. Some people may not want it to be the basis. I just heard that from somebody.
Okay.
That's-
I think we've made our decision. So we've heard some comment from the public, and commissioners had a chance, and we've
30 seconds.
informally have said we're not releasing it.
Wonderful. I want my money back then.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Simple.
Mr. Bates.
You guys screwed up. Give me my money back. You were useless.
I don't know if I haven't heard.
No, I agree with you. Give me my money back. You paid a whole bunch of professionals and elected officials. You screwed up. Give me my money back. Thank you.
Okay, Peter, do you want to continue to address the questions? I think perhaps what might be a little easier is to start with our first comment, which was from Vicki about notifying property owners.
That's an option that the board could choose to do. It's not required because of the scale and scope of it and the cost, but it's certainly something that the board could decide if that's what they want to do at some time. And probably it would be, if it's done, it would be appropriate after you deliberate on the draft and you select the project description.
Mm-hmm.
What's the cost?
45,000 times what's the mailing cost? 50 cents.
Plus the time to identify the person.
Yeah. I mean, I guess one option would be if the land use is changing, such that it might change. If things remain the same, there's no change. But that could be an option, an alternative.
So that's something as we get closer to a finalization of notifying
Well, I guess
people
it's true.
right now.
As I say that, that
It's a draft.
that it may be more appropriate to do it earlier on because that way people have the opportunity to speak up before you make a decision that, yeah, this is the direction you want to go. You got a lot of people say this is a bad idea, then you could decide that, it's a bad idea.
Yeah, I mean, I know there's additional cost, but to me, it really covers
like if we send, you know, a letter to every landowner that where there's a change, then it covers us, you know, when they come to us, you know, 4 years from now and say, I never heard about this. You know, well, actually, we sent you, you know, notification that this was going on. So it does really do two things. One, it provides, you know, input for the landowner, and also, you know, it does cover, you know, our responsibility a little bit less, showing that we've done everything, including, you know, specific efforts.
The other thing that happens is there's information that goes out to some people, and it's inaccurate. And I think that you know, once you identify which properties will change, it'll minimize the 45,000 thing. I don't think we're going to be changing every parcel, but it does also get the right people the right information, because there was some information that was sent, like to my mom, for instance, scared the heck out of her because somebody was doing something to her property, and there was nobody doing anything to her property. So, so she had to go through that grief and the time and all of that to deal with that, and I don't think she should have had to done that. So.
Okay.
30 seconds.
We've got 30 seconds.
We've done postcard mailings, and we try to identify properties in which there was like down zoning or where they would have financial loss. And the cost is about 50 cents a postcard, and it was a few $1,000s. And if you do that, I think that would pretty well meet what Chris is talking about. Those are the people who are affected. You notify them in writing, and you notify them in an accurate way, truthful way. And we recommend that.
Okay, thank you. So, consensus of the board?
Yes.
Planning Commission? I'd like to see a little bit more data one way or the other. Are we talking about 45,000 notifications, 20,000, the cost, to be able to make a decision one way or the other? I really don't know. It doesn't sound like we have a real concrete answer for that.
We'd have to run some, you know, comparison analysis and figure out if you're comparing the current plan with the proposed plan and see what that number is. We could bring that back to you at some future date.
Okay.
Before,
I think that would be helpful.
I think there's also going, when you choose to do it, it's going to change how you do it, because are you going to tell people that your general plan designation is changing? Or is it changing because we've changed the names of things, or is something changing about what's possible to do with your property? And people are going to confuse that with my zoning is changing. So I think we need to really think about how that would be presented, although I like the idea that people would get a notification.
I agree, because your land use designation could basically, the name can change, but it's kind of just a name change, and you're still going to have the same zoning, which provides the...
I think we could figure out a way to craft a notice that notifies those people who could have an effect on the uses of the property under the current general plan and zoning.
So, I mean, just a thought. If you're out there meeting with folks anyhow, take a name, take a form, inform them, put it down so that you can maybe minimize the mailings that you have to do. If you're already talking to them, you could already...
Well, I think that probably, they're already engaged and involved. It's the people who don't realize what's going on.
Right.
I think the public is asking that they be notified. So we're doing that anyway.
Yeah. I think just taking a look at the pros and cons and the cost and what numbers we're talking about would be helpful to decide which avenue to take.
Bring that information back for you.
All right. Mr. Kelly was our next speaker. 120-day public review. I think we agreed to the 90-day. He talked about the housing element, the zoning map, and schedules. I think we addressed most of those questions through our previous discussion. Mr. Kelly is...
He did bring up an issue regarding Section 65302 of the Government Code. I'd have to take a look at that and see what that ordinance says. We will be addressing flooding that's a requirement of the general plan. It will be looked at in the context of primarily the safety element and how it relates to housing. So that will be addressed. I have to look at the code and see what he says about hearing. I'm not familiar with the specifics of what he's talking about. But if there are required hearings, those will be held.
All right. Mr. Segawa was the next speaker, and Tanya, and basically discussing the 11 points and offering their comments on that. I don't recall any particular questions from those 11 points. Okay. Mr. Infacino was our next speaker, and he handed a handout. I think we addressed most of those items in there. I think most of those items were item 4.
Yeah, the alternatives.
Okay.
He would like there to be a public process in which alternatives are developed so that when the CEQA documents are prepared, the alternatives are reasonable alternatives. Is that right, Tom?
That is in part covered through the scoping process of the beginning steps, the notice preparation and scoping for the EIR. Whether or not we have specific hearings to identify and discuss the alternatives, that's not typically something that would happen.
The reason I brought it up was I think we've all learned over the course of this general plan update process that there are divergent views in the county with regard to resource use and environmental mitigation. The purpose of reviewing alternatives in the EIR is so that you can compare those options. The other purpose for preparing alternatives in the EIR is to inform the public debate about those alternatives so that you're not arguing, as Mr. Buckley suggested, you're not arguing purely based on philosophies, but based on facts and evidence. So the suggestion is to provide a way to meet both those objectives. One, to provide, inform the public debate about these choices, and to take account of these differences in land use proposals. That way, at the end of the process, if the board wants to choose a different path, it has that ability to do that. Otherwise, when you get to the end of this process, there will be one general plan. It'll be take it or leave it, and there'll be very little wiggle room associated with your decision-making process. That's the suggestion. And the reason we would do that in a public fashion is so that the different sides could get their suggestions for alternatives made.
Okay. Okay, so is that something we can consider as we go forward with that process?
I think we can consider that after we conclude the
scoping.
Scoping part, yeah.
Okay. Next speaker is Mr. Haley. His question, as I recall, was why are we parcel specific versus a bubble kind of land use?
Well, I would disagree with his interpretation of the guidelines. I think you do need to be parcel specific. It is a general plan. You need to be sort of general in the context of the policies and land use designations, and not as specific as zoning. But it has to be applied to a certain parcel. If you don't know what the boundary is, what part are we identifying as being commercial and what part is residential? Where are the boundaries to the growth areas? Then it really serves no purpose, and it really doesn't allow us a very accurate analysis as well. So I don't agree that a bubble type of diagram with broad boundaries that are somewhat amorphous serves any purpose.
Okay. Mr. Haley answers your question?
Well, not correctly.
Sorry. You too have 30 seconds.
I understand the need in a community to define where commercial might go, residential might go, and community amenities might go. But to be parcel specific on each individual parcel is too specific. It'll cause a lot of confusion, and that's why a general plan is general. It's a general bubble diagram, and it's got into pretty in-depth in the state of California guidelines, and I just recommend that it be kept in that general context, not individual parcel map specific.
Okay. Is there any thoughts or comments from Planning Commission or Board on this item?
Seems like we're long past this. We've already done it, so.
Right.
Okay, well, continue to move forward on how Peter is operating there. Then we had Mr. Race's comments. I don't remember if there was a question or not. Was there a question?
No, I don't believe so.
No question?
He had some strong opinion statements.
He had opinions,
and
yes.
those will be addressed as we go through the process.
All right. We had Mr. Buckley's comments. I don't recall there's any questions in that.
I don't think
Mr.
so.
Buckley has 30 seconds, too.
All I had hoped is that I'd raise the question for you to resolve it as you move into the process of how to minimize people being on soapboxes for positions and other things and providing information that's most helpful to the process. And being on a soapbox, I will share, I cannot believe that your esteemed leadership here would never pay full attention to your county council, and I would urge you to always rely on your legal advice. That's what you're paying for.
Thank you.
Except when it's too conservative.
Okay, and then we, Mr. Fry, and I think we answered most of Mr. Fry's questions.
Most of us did.
So, did I miss any other public comments and questions? Okay, I think this is going to wrap up this particular item on the agenda. We've given staff direction in regards to the 4 areas that they've asked us to address. Was there anything else at this time? Peter, you have us all captive at this point. Anything else that you needed from us in regards to direction?
One more question. Was there any part of this general plan update that included the agriculture element?
Yes, that's the resource production element. And I guess I'd like to say that, I have looked at pretty much everything that's been out there and gleaned what I thought was appropriate from the water element, the economic development element, all the community plans, drafts and existing, and tried to incorporate those into the general plan. So we'll see how good a job I did in a few weeks.
Thank you, Peter. I think you're doing a wonderful job, and I know you have a good staff and our consultants, and I think you have a good handle on things, so continue the good work there. Okay, as mentioned earlier in the day, we were going to take a lunch break around the 12:30 hour, so I'm only 5 minutes off. So we're going to take a 1-hour lunch break. We'll reconvene here at the 1:35 hour, and we will continue item number 21 at that point. Thank you.
So at this point, should I close the planning commission meeting? Okay. No, we don't want to come back. So this is officially closing the planning commission meeting. Thank you. Commissioners?
I'm sorry.
That's all right. We just wanted to make sure we had